We'll begin our session. Hope I'm audible. Respected dignitaries, guests, faculties, and students, a very good morning and warm welcome to the first international webinar on post-truth era with the human rights hosted by St. Mary's College. As you all know, the theme of this webinar is human rights violations in scenario. Let us begin this auspicious moment with prayer.
ഉയരത്തിൽ നിന്നും ഉദയം ചെയ്യും ഉലകിൻ പ്രകാശമേ വാ, ഇരുളാർന്ന എൻ്റെ ഹൃദയത്തിൽ വന്ന് അറിവിൻ്റെ ഒളി വിതറൂ, അറിവിൻ്റെ ഒളി വിതറൂ. ജ്ഞാനത്തിൻ പാതയിൽ മുത്തുകൾ തേടുവാൻ എൻ ഹൃദയം നീ ഉണർത്തണമേ. ജ്ഞാനത്തിൻ സഹജാതരെ നിത്യം സതതം കാക്കുവാൻ സകലേശ കനിയേണമേ. സഹജാതരെ നിത്യം സതതം കാക്കുവാൻ സകലേശ കനിയേണമേ. ഉയരത്തിൽ നിന്നും ഉദയം ചെയ്യും ഉലകിൻ പ്രകാശമി വാ. ഇരുളാർന്ന എൻ്റെ ഹൃദയത്തിൽ വന്ന് അറിവിൻ്റെ ഒളി വിതറൂ, അറിവിൻ്റെ ഒളി വിതറൂ.
No food, no water, no land, no home, no job, less wages, segregations, not even the right to be alive. Yes, we see hands raising every single moment for rights. Today, we have eminent dignitaries here to share their ideas and views on human rights, and it is a moment of great honor and pride for St. Mary's College to conduct such an event.
Is a unique institution of higher education in several ways. It is run by the Congregation of the Sons of the Immaculate Conception CFIC. Its platitudinous tradition and consistent achievements in various fields of human activity envelop it with the brilliance of outstanding temple of knowledge. Students need a convenient environment for studies with extreme concentration, and it can never be created without sound infrastructure and facilities. Our campus spreads across about 11 acres situated near Amadipuram in the Malappuram district of Kerala. The college has the easy accessibility of both the road and the railways. The college campus is refreshingly green with beautiful gardens which provide a shady ambience to the premises. It is true to its foundational vision and mission to develop the college as a unique institution recognized globally for its excellence and innovation, equipping the students to venture out into the competitive world. The college, through its many years of uncompromising journey, has grown into a pioneering institution offering 13 undergraduate programs and 3 postgraduate programs. Our college is a large and diverse organization with staff and students from a broad range of backgrounds and experiences. We aim to create a tolerant environment where everyone can reach their full potential. Our classrooms are spacious, well ventilated with natural lights, and most of the classrooms have audiovisual facilities, display boards, and age-appropriate furniture. Our college has a well-furnished and automated library. It has a good collection of books and subscribed journals, magazines, and newspapers. The college is endowed with excellent physical infrastructure which provides an academic atmosphere conducive to the integrated development of the students. Our college has an excellent teaching faculty with highly qualified and well-experienced staff. We care to maintain the teacher-student ratio. All teachers are full-time and the students are given special attention in their studies. The excellent result in the university examination is due to the dedicated constant effort by the staff. The teaching aids used by the staff are modern and helps the students to learn the subject thoroughly. We have 5 fully equipped laboratories: computer science, physical science, chemical science, language, and psychology. All the laboratories are well equipped with all the required apparatus, chemicals, and specimens. All these things provide the trainees comfortable working conditions to conduct the experiments. These laboratories help students to complement their sound theoretical knowledge with hands-on application. The college has an exclusive computer resource center for practical classes. It has high-speed internet facility, equipped with an impressive number of computer machines, and the room is spacious enough to accommodate a fairly large number of students. Sports are a crucial part of a student's growth and development. They help in the development of mental health and physical fitness of the body. Through participation in sports and games, a student gains various skills, experience, and confidence. All these things are helpful for developing their personality. Sports are an important part of our curriculum. Our college is well equipped with multi-sporting facilities that include cricket, shuttle, basketball, volleyball, football, and other indoor games like table tennis, carom, and chess. St. Mary's College not only aims to improve a student's physical abilities but also instill a sense of good sportsmanship in them. Expert training is provided in various sports events such as basketball, badminton, volleyball, and football. The college team and students have showed their excellence in various intra-institutional, district, university, state, and national level competitions. Practicing yoga is said to come with many benefits for both mental and physical health. We also give importance to yoga. The secret to success is written on the doors of the auditorium. Yes, it's true, as our auditorium is used for not only conducting general assemblies but also other programs. We have both indoor and open auditorium. It helps us to conduct many events. The college conducts various programs such as Malayalam Vedi, Malayalam Madhuri, Arts Fest, and so on. We do all these things with the support of the Department of Malayalam, as we give much more importance towards the cultural development of the students. We are also committed towards reducing its environmental impact through a number of measures like waste management, rainwater harvesting, plastic-free campus, and so on. Thank you.
A very good morning to one and all. I am Anupama from the Department of English, St. Mary's College, Puthanangadi. COVID-19 has affected the world at large, but this has also given us a glimpse of the good that exists. To beat this worldwide pandemic, the world must come together. In the fight to end this crisis, we can't afford to lose anyone behind. Thanks to the technology. Now we shall begin our webinar officially. First, let me call our constant source of motivation, Mr. Uday Kumar, Assistant Professor from the Department of English, St. Mary's College, Puthanangadi, to deliver the welcome address.
Respected dignitaries, research scholars, faculties of St. Mary's College, invited guests and students, a warm good morning to one and all. It's my greatest pleasure and pride to deliver welcome address of an auspicious event, Post-Truth Era with our human rights. Today international webinar, which will be marked as an epoch in the history of St. Mary's College, Puthanangadi. Post-truth era is an era of great development in science and technology, which are intended for the growth of and well-being of human beings. Yet, why we lack access to right? Has human right become a mere illusion? The rumination, protest, and loud cry of scholars of these 2 days on human rights to inspire action. My obliged duty is to welcome all the dignitaries gathered here. It is my greatest pleasure to welcome Reverend Jose Matthew Parayil, Provincial Superior of CFIC, India, the Chairman, Founder, and former Principal of St. Mary's College, Puthanangadi, a personality of great insight, an excellent teacher, guiding light to younger generation, and after all, a great humanitarian. I cordially welcome you, Reverend Father, to our international webinar. Now, I would like to welcome another eminent personality, Mrs. Antonella Soria Bruno, lawyer, barrister, and solicitor, Ministry of Justice, Alberta, Canada, who has become famous in Canada for her active involvement in law to protect children. Undoubtedly, Mrs. Antonella is an apt person for our webinar, whose valuable presence and keynote address will enrich and enlighten us. A wholehearted welcome to you, madam, to the platform of St. Mary's College. Now, with great pleasure, I welcome Dr. Arun Kumar, Journal 24 Channel, a great scholar and assistant professor science, University, Thiruvananthapuram. Surely, his presentation will be thought-provoking. Sir, you are cordially welcomed to Post-Truth Era with our human rights, a 2-day international webinar. I would like to welcome Reverend Father Denny Cholapalli, the young and dynamic principal of St. Mary's College, Puthanangadi, who guides the college in true path, preserving its mission and vision. A warm welcome to you, Reverend Father, to this international webinar. Now, I would like to welcome Reverend Father Verghese Kochuparambil, Administrator, Luigi Bhavan Campus, who is well experienced and his dedicated services are in the growth of St. Mary's College. Reverend Father, you are warmly welcomed to this international webinar. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Balachandran KK, Head of Department of Commerce and Management and the patron of Post-Truth Era with our human rights, today webinar. A very warm welcome to you, sir. I would like to welcome Mr. Sandeep K., Assistant Professor of Department of Commerce and Management, who is the program convener of Post-Truth Era with our human rights. It is my pleasure to welcome all the heads of various departments of St. Mary's College, Puthanangadi. A warm welcome to you. Now, I would like to welcome all the invited guests and research scholars to this international webinar. I would like to invite all the staff and students of St. Mary's College to this international webinar. Once again, I wholeheartedly welcome all of you to Post-Truth Era Human Rights Today International Webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, let me call upon the man who doesn't need any introduction and known to all of us for his wisdom and his knowledge. Yes, a pillar of strength. With much pleasure and honor, let me invite our beloved principal, Reverend Father Denny Chalapalil, for the presidential address.
I would just add what is happening to me is not unique. Many activists, lawyers, writers, journalists, students, poets, intellectuals, and others who stand for the rights of Adivasis, Dalits, and marginalized and express their dissent to the ruling powers of the country are being targeted. Said Father Stan Swami, the Jesuit priest and a tribal rights activist based in Jharkhand, who passed away on 5th July 2021 while under police custody. Dear respected Joseph Paril, the Provincial Superior of CFIC congregation and the chairman of St. Mary's College, Varghese Kochvarambil, the manager, Chaco, the vice principal, Miss Antonella Soria Runo, the legal advisor from Canada, Dr. Arun Kumar, Dr. K.K. Balachandran, Mr. Sandeep, the convener of the program, and all my dear participants. I am extremely happy that St. Mary's College could keep aside these 2 days exclusively to listen, to discuss, enrich, and update each one of us on the topic on with the human rights. Today, as we look across the globe, we realize this topic is very relevant to be discussed. We have a good number of efficient personalities with us to make this topic to be presented in a very simple and understanding way. During these 2 days, let us bring our attention to the most important human rights issues, and violations. We are faced with greed and self-confidence that we ignore the difference that exists among us. So we have to start to reach out and accept others. All we have a part to play, so get with it or get out of it, because everyone have their time. The cause of human rights, freedom and dignity is close to the heart of everyone. Transparency and accountability are integral to this process. We must start with the diplomacy rooted in the heart of every citizen's most cherished democratic values, defending freedom, championing opportunity, upholding universal rights, respecting the rule of law, and treating every person with dignity. Transparency and accountability are integral to this process. Let us turn our attention to a handful of key issues and themes that have been prominent in the field of human rights. Let us examine some of defining moments for each religion. Look at key movements that have called for change and consider the particular how the rights of women have fared during these years. We also acknowledge the many human rights defenders working around the world today and pay tribute to the who have lost their lives or freedom in the course of their work. Even in the darkest moments, their courage gives us the strength to continue our fight for human rights. Human rights are independent, and the deprivation of right can be can cause the border fabric of society to fray, despite potential risk to their health or threats of arrest or other repercussions. People around the world demanded the governments respect their human rights and inherent dignity. The 2020 report on human rights reflects the unique challenge the nation had to confront as the COVID-19 virus spread throughout the world. The pandemic impacted not only individuals' health but their abilities to safely enjoy their human rights and fundamental freedom. Some governments use the crisis as a pretext to restrict rights and consolidate authoritarian rule. Other governments relied on democratic rules and democratic violence increased due to lockdown and the loss of traditional social protections. Other marginalized populations, including older persons, persons with disabilities, experienced particular vulnerability. Here, on this auspicious moment, I am so happy to verbalize the sentiments of gratitude to the entire team for organizing this mega event. This event is the long cherished dream of the entire team. I am privileged to say that St. Mary's College is honored with the valuable presence of great personalities like Father Jose Parail, the chairman of St. Mary's College, Miss Antonella Sore Bruna from Canada, and Dr. Arun Kumar. We are all waiting to listen to you. A word of appreciation to Mr. Sandeep, the Assistant Professor of St. Mary's College and the convener of the event, and to the entire team for organizing this two-day international conference. Wishing you all the best and thanking all I remain. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Father. It is an honor to have a personality like you as our principal. We all are delighted to have such an eligible person with such a good experience to monitor our college. Once again, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Alexander the Great once said, "I'm not afraid of any army of lions led by a sheep. I am afraid of an army of sheep led by a lion." Yes, a backbone, a wings of light. And with much honor, let me invite Reverend Father Jose Matthew Parail, Provincial Superior of CFIC India and the Chairman of our college, to officially inaugurate the program.
Respected dignitaries on this Zoom platform, respected principal, vice principal, administrator, distinguished guests, staff and students of St. Mary's College, and my dear friends, very good morning to all of you. I'm happy to participate and inaugurate this international webinar on post-truth era and human rights conducted in St. Mary's College, Puttanangadi. It's a topic very relevant in this present age. I congratulate and appreciate St. Mary's College for organizing such a webinar on a very relevant topic like post-truth era and human rights. The United Nations General Assembly held in 1948 made the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's a milestone document that proclaims the unchallengeable and absolute rights which everyone is entitled to as a human being, regardless of race, color, religion, sex, language, etc. I just would like to turn your attention to the fact that how a distorted truth and distorted information can violate the rights and dignity of a person. The post-truth era is characterized by the priority that it gives the emotions rather than factual arguments in discussions about public affairs. The public has become more attentive, even addicted to the news and arguments that create emotions rather than to those providing actual information. Very often among these emotions, hatred is a dominating one in public discourses. Accordingly, in the debates which take place in public forum, the leaders are not interested to present a new strategy, a plan to improve life conditions of the public, but rather they use hateful expressions to divide the society into us and them. The exercise of free speech is needed for the exchange of opinions and arguments, and in order to negotiate what ideas will be applied, choose the best options out from the marketplace of ideas. This free speech is needed. It's a basic factor for all the democracies. However, we consider that democracy is not only about liberty, but also about equality. To be free and equal in dignity and human right is not only the first article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but one of the cornerstones of a properly functioning democracy. Egalitarian societies do not mean that everybody has equal pay, house, or books. Instead, egalitarian societies provide its individual equal standing as citizens and valuable members of the community. As a citizen, if I am continuously attacked because of my faith, skin color, sex, disability, or gender, I probably will not engage in free exchange of opinions. Moreover, I will be discouraged from caring about the public space and will refrain from investing myself in public affairs. My capacities to participate in the democracy are diminished when someone's use of free speech creates animosity and attacks who I am. Therefore, effective enjoyment of human rights is one of the basic functions of democracies. Democracy, as we have known it, embraces pluralism and accepts diversity. If this diversity is denied, the human rights for all is also denied. We are already fed up with listening to the unbearable noise of hatred, which hijack truth from public affairs. All human rights bearers, including the haters, need to become more responsible in the enjoyment of their rights. When truth is distorted for sensation and emotional satisfaction, the rights and dignity of an individual is denied. Hence, we should not forget that we all have the responsibility of respecting the rights and dignity of every other individual while we use our freedom of speech as a citizen of democratic state. According to Eleanor Roosevelt, where, after all, do universal human rights begin? In small places, close to home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere. Without concerted citizens' action to uphold them close to home, we shall look in vain for progress in the larger world. I hope that this webinar will help us to be aware of our responsibility to keep human rights in height, even in this post-truth era, where it is challenged. I'm happy to inaugurate this international seminar because it somehow put all us into an argument reflection about how this human right is respected and how the informations and distorted truth violate the human rights. So I use this occasion to thank all of you for giving me a chance to inaugurate this webinar. And I declare that this international webinar is officially inaugurated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father. Your thought-provoking address set a perfect platform for our speakers to deliver their presentations. Now, I invite Mr. Sandeep, Assistant Professor from the Department of Commerce and Management Studies, the Program Coordinator, to provide an outline about today's seminar.
Am I audible?
Yes,
Am I
sir.
audible?
Yes, yes.
Respected dignitaries and participants, good morning one and all. Myself, Sandeep A., Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, St. Mary's College. Let me give you a brief description regarding today's program. As stated by the UN Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Today, in this 21st century, even after 73 years of its declaration, equality, dignity, and rights are distant dream for the world. Today's human rights violations are the cause of tomorrow's conflicts. In this Jubilee year of St. Mary's College, with extreme pleasure and pride, let me introduce the first and foremost international program conducted by our college. The two-day international webinar on post-truth era with our human rights is going to be held today and tomorrow, virtually in the presence of efficient and eminent dignitaries like Mrs. Antonella Soria Bruno, lawyer, barrister, and solicitor, Ministry of Justice, Government of Alberta, Canada, and Dr. Arun Kumar, journalist, 24 News Channel, and Advocate Dr. Sebastian Paul, ex-MP, and Dr. Gigi Paul, assistant professor from MD College. And in day one, after the inaugural session and keynote address, we will be having paper presentation by our guest of honor, and then we'll be moving on to the paper presentation by research scholars and students from various universities and colleges. Day two also having witnessed the paper presentation by eminent personalities like Dr. Sebastian Paul and Dr. Gigi Paul. And after that, we will continue with the paper presentation by scholars. The seminar will end with a valedictory function addressed by Chief Guest, Father Jibin, and Guest of Honor, Father Chaco. And the best paper award will be given by Dr. Remy Joseph, Director of Monty International Institute of Management Studies. We are honored to host an international event in our college, and our participants and organizers will benefit a lot from the experience involved in it. Let us join hands to make it as a huge success. Thank you one and all.
Thank you, sir, for a good intro for our seminar. Now, I would like to introduce the keynote speaker, Mrs. Antonella Soria Bruno, lawyer and barrister, solicitor, Ministry of Justice from Canada. To speak more about her, Antonella is a graduate of the International Baccalaureate program. She completed a Bachelor of Arts degree in history at the University of Alberta in 1991 and obtained her Bachelor of Law degree from the University of Alberta in 1995. She was called to the Alberta Bar in 1996. She started her career as a barrister and solicitor with the Ministry of Justice with the Government of Alberta in 1996 and continues to date as a lawyer with Alberta Justice. Her practice and work with Alberta Justice has been focused in child protection law and family law. However, she also had experience in human rights, Aboriginal law, privacy law, and criminal justice issues. She has worked on the development of legislations including the Children's First Act, the Child, Youth, and Family Enhancement Act, the Protection Against Family Violence Act, the Protection of Sexually Exploited Children's Act, the Child and Youth Advocate Act, and the Child Care Licensing Act. She always had a passion for children's rights and children's issues. With a great pleasure, I welcome Mrs. Antonia Soria Bruno for the keynote address. Ma'am, please.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, here in Edmonton, it's Tuesday and it's good evening, but I cannot tell you how honored I am to participate in this webinar. I just want to state right at the beginning that the views that I will be expressing in my presentation to you are my own. I am not here in my capacity representing either the government of Canada or the government of Alberta, but I hope that my 15 years of experience in an area that's very dear and near to my heart, children's rights and children's issues, will lend some interesting debate and will provide some food for thought. I was, as I said earlier, very honored when I was asked to participate in your webinar, particularly given that St. Mary's College is celebrating, I understand, its silver anniversary. The college was founded 25 years ago by the Congregation of the Sons of the Immaculate Conception. And when I was preparing my remarks, I did some research into the college and what its mission and vision was. And I found it interesting that the vision of St. Mary's College is very much consistent with the issues that we are here to discuss over these 2 days. If you will bear with me, I think it's worth repeating what the mission of the college is. The mission of St. Mary's College is to provide the students ample scope for all-round development of the personality and to promote positive change and social justice for the betterment of humankind. You can't get a more important statement on what an educational institution should try to instill in its students on an individual basis as they move forward through their educational career and then onwards into careers, family life, and just everyday living. As I was preparing my remarks for you today and contemplating St. Mary's College's mission, specifically what struck me was that statement on the promotion of positive change and social justice for the betterment of humankind. I couldn't help but recall the last speech that President Barack Obama made to the United Nations General Assembly in September of 2016. It was September 20th, as a matter of fact. And it was the last speech he made. It was at the end of his presidency. The first African-American president of the United States, which in and of itself, you could argue is a great accomplishment for a country which, is one of the oldest democracies in the world, is often seen as the pinnacle of democratic principles and freedom, but also a country that has a very tortured and complex past, a country that was built on slavery. So it was significant that President Obama made certain statements in his speech, which I couldn't help but call to mind as I was preparing my remarks for this webinar. In his speech, Barack Obama stated, "We must reject any forms of fundamentalism or racism." He went further and said, "The United Nations should reflect the irreducible truth that doing what is best for all people is also the best way to ensure a better future for the people of any one country." President Obama concluded his address to the UN by quoting Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr., of course, is a civil rights icon, not just in the United States of America, but around the world. He was a Baptist minister who espoused the beliefs of Mahatma Gandhi, who believed in civil rights activism and the pursuit of social justice through nonviolence. Gandhi referred to this form of nonviolent activism, and forgive me for my pronunciation, as Satyagraha. Translated, this means truth force or love force. Practicing this form of nonviolent activism means that a person should seek truth and love while refusing, through nonviolent resistance, to participate in something that person believes is wrong. Both Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. are two of my personal heroes. They deeply influenced me as a young student at university and helped shape my beliefs and my view of human rights and activism. In quoting Martin Luther King Jr., President Obama said that people around the world should strive to be co-workers with God in the pursuit of peace and prosperity. I would add that this also applies to the pursuit of social justice. My view is that there can be no peace and no true prosperity without social justice. President Obama went further in this final speech to the UN. He stated, "I see that spirit in our young people around the world. The next generation is more educated and more tolerant and more inclusive and more diverse than our generation. They are more empathetic and compassionate toward their fellow human beings." This speech and these words resonated for me and continue to resonate for me. I found hope in these words. I have continued to find hope in these words in the events that have followed in the last 4 years, 5 years since Barack Obama's presidency. I have faith in what President Obama said, particularly in relation to the youth of the world. Human rights and social justice is not withering, but flourishing. However, I also heed the warning in President Obama's words, the warning about fundamentalism and racism. He made this speech in 2016, in September of 2016. It was almost a forewarning of the events of May 25th, 2020 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the United States of America. On that day, an African-American man, George Floyd, was murdered by a white police officer. A white police officer who placed his knee on the back of Mr. Floyd's neck for over 8 minutes while Mr. Floyd screamed, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." That phrase resonated around the world and sparked a social justice protest, raising awareness that racism is not just blatant and in our face, but is systemic and unseen. The murder of George Floyd shocked the world out of its complacency, particularly for those of us in North America. We tend to see human rights in North America as an issue not for us, but for other places in the world. The view or the perception that we have here in Canada, which is a liberal democracy, with laws, policies, and programs which protect human rights. The view that we have here is Canada doesn't have human rights issues. Really? Is this statement correct? This view goes further to state that human rights are endangered in places like China, an authoritarian, repressive regime that has a poor human rights record. For example, the persecution of human rights activists in Hong Kong, the persecution of the Uyghur, the Muslim minority in China. Canadians also point to North Korea and the repressive regime of Kim Jong-un. They point to Iran and Syria as examples of other areas in the world where human rights are being attacked. Canadians believe that Canada is a champion of human rights around the world. I would concur with that. In fact, earlier this week, Canada joined other G7 countries like the United States and Great Britain in imposing sanctions, new sanctions against Belarus to protest what Canada called gross violations of human rights. These violations in Belarus are in relation to the Belarusian president, Lukashenko, rigging his election and crushing any political opposition against him any way he can, using the full power of the police and the military if necessary. Canada has also, as I've said earlier, denounced China, North Korea, and Russia for totalitarian and anti-human rights anti-human rights actions. But the question remains, what about human rights in Canada? What's happening in our own backyard? Gandhi said that the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. For me, this means how a society treats its children and youth. I have dedicated my professional career to children and children's issues. I've worked in the child protection field, acting for the government of Alberta to protect children from physical, sexual, emotional, and mental abuse and exploitation. I've also worked on behalf of the government of Alberta in relation to international child abduction cases under the UN Convention. So let's have a look at how Canada does treat children with respect to human rights. In 1991, Canada ratified the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child. Canada is also a party to 2 of the 3 optional protocols. This includes the optional protocol on the Convention on the Rights of the Child on the involvement of children in armed conflict. This prohibits the compulsory recruitment and the direct participation in hostilities by the forces of a state or persons under the age of 18. Canada is also a signatory to the optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child on the sale of children, child prostitution, and child pornography. This requires states to criminalize these activities, making prosecution of offenders easier and instituting measures for the protection of child victims. Canada, however, has not ratified the 3rd optional protocol, this being the optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child on a Communications Procedure. This protocol sets out an international complaints procedure for child rights violations. Children in Canada also enjoy the rights protected in the other principal human rights treaties that Canada has ratified. These include the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the optional protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the International Covenant on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the optional protocol to the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women, the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhumane, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment, and finally, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. In 2007, the Government of Canada went further and created the Interdepartmental Working Group on Children's Rights. This group is co-chaired by the Public Health Agency and the Department of Justice Canada. This working group was created to promote a whole government approach to children's rights and to encourage linkages among departments with policies that affect children. The improvement of the health and rights of women and children around the world has been Canada's top developmental priority since 1990. National Child Day is held every year on November 20th and has been celebrated across Canada since 1993. The Public Health Agency of Canada leads the Government of Canada's activities related to the National Child Day. The agency's website also provides information and resources that promote and support learning more about children's rights. Even though the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child is not fully implemented in Canadian law, the Supreme Court of Canada has decided that the values and principles in the convention are still important to decision-making about children. This means when a court is interpreting domestic legislation, it should prefer interpretations that reflect the values and principles in the convention where possible, because the government is presumed to have respected the values and principles of international law when it made the law. Now, I referred to the Supreme Court of Canada and how it has interpreted the application of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child in Canada. And I referenced the fact that the law is not fully implemented in Canada. Canada is a federation where the national government, the Government of Canada, and the individual governments of the 10 provinces and the 3 territories that make up Canada have specific powers and jurisdictions over specific areas defined in the Constitution of Canada. Thus, the federal government has certain heads of power. The provincial governments have certain specific designated heads of power. This is all set out in the Constitution Act of 1867. That's when Canada became a nation. Under the Constitution Act of 1867, the Government of Canada has the power to ratify international treaties. Thus, the Government of Canada in 1991 ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child. However, under the Constitution Act of 1867, the provincial and territorial governments bear the responsibility of implementing the terms or provisions of treaties when the subject matter falls within the scope of provincial powers. In Canada, the individual provinces and territories are responsible for the provision of health, education, and child welfare services to children, and for the protection of children's civil rights. Thus, looking at Alberta, Alberta would be responsible for the implementation of the Convention of the Rights of the Child. Now, Canada ratified this convention in 1991. Alberta pledged qualified support for the objectives and principles of the convention in January of 1999. 8 years after Canada ratified the treaty. And Alberta's support was qualified. It was based on an understanding that the convention would be applied as long as it did not usurp or override parental authority. I'm just going to take a moment to discuss this particular position that was taken by the government of Alberta with respect to the convention. In my view, my personal view, this view is consistent with how historically children have been perceived by society. Namely, children were seen as belonging to their parent, belonging to their guardian, basically seen as property or chattel. Children were viewed through the lens of adults, subject completely to the authority of an adult. In my view, if we continue to perceive children secondary to adults, the economic, physical, and sexual exploitation of children will never be completely eradicated. They are secondary to the consideration of the adults. That means that there is a primary consideration, which is not for the child. I'm in no way suggesting that the position of the Alberta government with respect to the convention promotes the exploitation of children. In no way does it do that. However, it does relegate children to a secondary or lesser status. This view adopts an approach where an adult identifies what are the interests of the child that should be protected, often separate from a consideration of basic human rights that should apply to everyone, regardless of age. Interests and rights are not the same thing. Why should issues affecting adults by necessity involve a conversation about rights? But issues affecting children involve conversations about interests. Yes, best interests, that's the governing doctrine in Canada when considering decisions that affect children. But interests nonetheless. Contemplate what even the perception of such a difference means for children when it comes time to allocate resources and set priorities. Food for thought. As I stated earlier, Canada is a federation. Under its constitution, the government of Canada has the responsibility for criminal law. In Canada, the legal age for criminal responsibility is 12. Children who are at least 12, but not under the age of 18, and who are alleged to have committed a criminal offense are subject to the provisions of the Youth Criminal Justice Act. If a child under 12 commits a crime, those matters or those issues are usually dealt with through the child intervention, child welfare, or child protection system. The Youth Criminal Justice Act contains both a preamble and a declaration of principle. These include the following statements. Society has a responsibility to address the developmental challenges and needs of young persons. Communities and families should work in partnership with others to prevent youth crime by addressing its underlying causes, responding to the needs of young persons, and providing guidance and support. Accurate information about youth crime, the youth justice system, and effective measures should be publicly available. Young persons have special guarantees of their rights and freedoms, including those set out in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. The youth justice system should take into account the interests of victim and ensure accountability through meaningful consequences, rehabilitation, and reintegration. The youth justice system should reserve its most serious interventions for the most serious crimes and reduce the over-reliance on incarceration. The youth justice system is intended to protect the public by holding young persons accountable through measures that are proportionate to the seriousness of the offense and the degree of responsibility of the young person, promoting the rehabilitation and reintegration of the young person, and supporting crime prevention by referring young persons to programs or agencies in the community to address the circumstances underlying their offending behavior. The youth justice system must be separate from the adult system and must be based on the principles of diminished moral blameworthiness or culpability. The youth justice system must reflect the fact that young people lack the maturity of adults. The youth system is different from the adult system in many respects. Measures of accountability are consistent with young persons' reduced level of maturity. Procedural protections are enhanced. Rehabilitation and reintegration are given special emphasis, and the importance of timely intervention is recognized. Young persons are to be held accountable through interventions that are fair and in proportion to the seriousness of the offense. Within the limits of fair and proportionate accountability, interventions should reinforce respect for societal values, encourage the repair of harm done, be meaningful to the young person, respect gender, ethnic, cultural, and linguistic differences, and respond to the needs of Aboriginal young persons and young persons with special requirements. Youth justice proceedings require a recognition that young persons have rights and freedoms in their own right and special guarantees of these rights and freedoms. Courtesy, compassion, and respect for victims, the opportunity for victims to be informed and to participate, and that parents be informed and encouraged to participate in addressing the young person's offending behavior. These principles are embedded within the legislation, and in my view, mark a recognition that children are subject to human rights, and these rights are important and should be respected and considered, particularly when addressing criminal issues which affect the very freedom of an individual. Under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, there is provision that a young person who is 14 years of age or older and is charged with a violent offense, this would include murder, attempted murder, manslaughter, or aggravated sexual assault, the prosecutor can apply for an adult sentence. Individual provinces may decide to change the age at which this obligation is triggered. It could be triggered at 14. A province may decide to trigger it at 15 or 16. In Alberta, where a young person who is 14, it is triggered at 14. If a young person is 14 and charged with one of these more serious offenses like murder, the prosecutor has the ability to apply for an adult sentence. It is important to note that where a young person who is charged, tried, and then convicted of a more serious offense like murder or attempted murder, and an adult sentence is imposed, that young person does not serve his or her sentence in an adult facility. The sentence, while an adult sentence, is served in a young offender facility. This, again, in my view, reflects considerations of the dignity and human rights of a child. In many jurisdictions in the United States, children, very young children, 14, 15, 16, who are charged with serious offenses and receive adult sentences, actually serve their time in adult facilities. The horrific stories of the abuse and exploitation that's suffered by some of these children is terrifying, and the things of nightmares. In Canada, youths that are charged under the Youth Justice Act have a right to a lawyer. In Alberta, all youth are eligible to get a lawyer through Legal Aid Alberta at no cost. Our Supreme Court, the Supreme Court of Canada, has stated that all youth are entitled to legal representation in criminal proceedings at no cost. A youth can, if they so choose, retain their own counsel at their own cost. However, duty counsel and legal aid counsel is provided to youth at absolutely no cost. And in Alberta, there is a designated office of legal aid that has lawyers that are specifically trained in youth criminal justice issues and have specific training on how to engage with young people and seek competent instructions from them. In Canada, when a youth is arrested or held at the police station for questioning, the police must notify the youth's parents or guardian about the arrest. The Youth Criminal Justice Act provides for a publication ban that applies to any youth charged under the Act. This publication ban provision, of course, is in accordance with the rehabilitation nature of the legislation. From my earlier discussion on the principles of the legislation, the underlying principle of the Youth Criminal Justice Act here in Canada is, yes, there's an element of accountability and punishment to fit the crime, but one of the most overriding principles is rehabilitation and ultimately, whenever possible, reintegration. Thus, if the youth's identity is not protected, it would be, he or she might find it difficult to return to his or her community. It might also affect the youth's ability to move forward in life if this provision did not exist. Please note, however, that if a youth has committed a very serious offense, for example, murder, manslaughter, and is treated as an adult, in other words, receives an adult sentence, the youth's name may be published unless a court rules otherwise. A youth's criminal record is open for a specific period of time only, called an access period. And during this access period, only the police, the court, and other very specific individuals listed in the Act can have access to the record. This would include probationary services, for example, or counseling services. Generally, the youth record, a youth that has a youth criminal record, will eventually, even in the cases of serious offenses, no longer be available to anyone. This includes the police and the courts. Again, this is in accordance with the rehabilitation nature, the reintegration nature of the Youth Criminal Justice Act. However, if a youth commits other crimes during the period of time that their criminal record is available during the access period and is over 18, the youth record will then become part of the youth's adult record. As we discussed earlier, the individual provinces and territories are responsible for the provision of health, education, and child welfare services to children, and for the protection of children's civil rights. Talked about the criminal context and the rights available to children, and how those rights are protected. In the civil context, those same rights and interests are the responsibility of the provinces. In Alberta, the age of majority is 18. This can vary from province to province. For example, in Alberta's neighbor to the west, British Columbia, the age of majority is 19. And in our neighbor to the east, Saskatchewan, the province of Saskatchewan, the age of majority is also 19. The Supreme Court of Canada, in the context of child protection or child welfare proceedings, has ruled that children involved in these proceedings are entitled to legal representation. The court held that, like in criminal proceedings where your freedom is at jeopardy, child protection proceedings where there is the potential of permanent removal from your family of origin, these proceedings merit legal representation at no cost to the child. In Alberta, specialized lawyers exist who represent children in child protection proceedings at no cost to the child. In fact, the Child, Youth, and Family Enhancement Act, which is the legislation in Alberta that deals with child protection or child intervention issues, has specific provisions in the Act for the appointment of lawyers for children. A judge can order that a lawyer be appointed at no cost to the child. Alberta also has a child and youth advocate. This advocate is an independent officer of the Alberta Legislative Assembly and is mandated to work with vulnerable young people. The advocate is independent of the government and of the ministry that oversees child intervention services. The Child and Youth Advocate provides individual and systemic advocacy for children and youth receiving designated services. This includes child protection services, health services, and even criminal justice services. This also includes people receiving or attempting to receive services under the Protection of Sexually Exploited Children's Act. The Child and Youth Advocate, in addition, conducts investigations into serious injuries and death of young people in the care of government and other designated services by government. The Child and Youth Advocate provides an annual report to the Alberta Legislature on their interaction with youth within the intervention system, the health system, and the justice system. In Canada and in Alberta, all decisions regarding children in relation to health, education, child welfare, and civil rights in law are governed by what's called the best interest of the child doctrine. Children are entitled to legal representation and to express their views on various issues, particularly in child protection and family law matters. The Child, Youth, and Family Enhancement Act, the Protection of Sexually Exploited Children's Act, and the Family Law Act and the Divorce Act, which deals with private family law matters, all have provisions that specifically state that where a child or youth is capable of expressing a view, that view must be considered by the presiding court in a proceeding regarding the child or that affects the child. The court, while the court must take the child's view into account, it is, however, not bound by that view. Please note that while child protection matters fall within the purview of the provinces and the territories, the Divorce Act falls within the purview of the federal government. So it's the national government that oversees the Divorce Act. Recently, amendments have been made to the Divorce Act that came into effect on July 1st of 2020 that change how the care of children is approached. Under the old Divorce Act or the old legislation, the care of children was discussed in terms of custody and access. Again, in my view, this is reflective of the perception of children as property. Who has physical control of the child makes all the decisions. The changes to the Divorce Act will start talking about the care of children in terms of decision-making responsibility, parenting time, and parenting contact. In my view, this makes the parents more responsible and accountable for specific aspects of the child's care and well-being, including their physical, emotional, psychological safety, security, and needs. Under the old Act, it was primarily about who had the physical control of the child, and from the physical control flowed all other control aspects of the child's life. Unfortunately, often proceedings under the Divorce Act become also proceedings under the Child Intervention Act. Custody and access disputes can become so adversarial that the best interests of the child can often be lost in the mix. Thus, the fact that children are entitled not only to express their views, but to have legal representation in these civil types of proceedings that have such ramifications for their well-being and development is fundamental, I believe, to human rights as it applies to children. In any discussion about children and human rights in Canada, it is important to note that the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and both national and individual, provincial and territorial human rights legislation apply to children too. Canada's done a pretty good job in legislation and providing services that focus on the dignity of the child and acknowledging that children are also subject to human rights and should have the same protections when it comes to human rights that adults do. I've provided you with a very brief and high-level overview of the legal protections that exist in Canada to give you a snapshot of the steps that Canada has taken and Alberta has taken to safeguard the human rights of children. However, I don't want to leave you with the impression that Canada's work with respect to social justice and human rights issues regarding children and youth is done. We have nothing more to do. I'm proud of the significant steps Canada has taken, but we are far from done. I could not, in good conscience, engage in a discussion about human rights for children in Canada and ignore the issue which is gripping our nation at the moment, that issue being the Aboriginal residential school issue. You may be aware that mass unmarked graves of Aboriginal children have been found at multiple former sites of residential schools. This legacy is a stain on Canada's human rights record. And the residential school system has been described as a government-sponsored assimilation system at any cost. Many argue that Canada continues to reap the disastrous effects of this system through the overrepresentation of Aboriginal peoples in the child intervention, mental health, and criminal justice system, with poverty, low literacy, family violence, sexual exploitation, addictions, and homelessness being disproportionately high in the Aboriginal community of Canada in comparison to the general population. Unfortunately, racism is alive and well in Canada. The Canadian Broadcasting Company, the CBC, our telecommunications network, has launched a campaign reminding Canadians every child matters. This sentiment cannot only be words. Every child matters. In a G7 country like Canada, a liberal democracy, where on April 13th of 2021, Canada, for the first time ever, took overall top spot in the 2021 Best Countries report. It cannot be acceptable that a country which has so much in terms of opportunities, resources. I look at my own example. I am the daughter of immigrants from Southern Italy. My parents came here to Canada in 1968. They left Southern Italy because in Southern Italy in post-World War II was very poor. There weren't many opportunities. My mother had a grade 9 education. My father was able to complete his grade 12 education by attending night school. They came here to give me and my younger brother an opportunity to get an education. And I became a lawyer because of those opportunities that were afforded to me. So when a country which has this kind of opportunities available to them, which provides in law such wonderful protections for its children, which takes human rights and its responsibility to advocate on behalf of peoples in other countries who are being subjected to persecution and horrendous human rights violations. When a country that has this opportunities, this view, also has the following statistics, it's concerning. For example, UNICEF, in its recent report card, October of 2020, so this report card would have been based on pre-pandemic conditions, gave Canada a failing grade with respect to its children. Canada ranked 30th among 38 developed economies in terms of child happiness and well-being. The report, the UNICEF report, revealed that although the average child poverty rate in Canada is 1 in 5, which in my view, in a country which can offer so much, is still unacceptable. Children from communities of color have rates as high as 1 in 3, while some Indigenous communities, the poverty rate is a bleak one. It's 1 in 2. The pandemic has only exacerbated these issues. Everything, however, is not all doom and gloom. There is an acknowledgement of this reality. The Government of Canada has recognized that racism and systemic racism are a reality in Canada and must be combated. Individual Canadians are also listening and looking at every aspect of life, including history and the Canadian nation-building experience, with a lens which considers perspectives not previously identified, let alone acknowledged. Something as simple as our own North American football team, so not our soccer team, this is North American football team, have been known since the 19th century as the Edmonton Eskimos. Eskimos is a very derogatory and racist reference to the Indigenous people of the Canadian North. It's a term that the Inuit people of the Canadian North, the Indigenous people of the Canadian North, do not use themselves, and it's very derogatory. As I said, this name has been tied to Edmonton sports teams since the 19th century. In light of this coming to terms, this awakening, the Edmonton football team has changed its name in acknowledgement that we need to take action, even in small ways, to underscore the importance of combating racism in every form. They've changed their name to the Elks. Now, the Elks, the Edmonton football team, is not the only professional sports team in North America to do this. We've seen the Washington Redskins in the US take a similar approach. The Cleveland Indians are another example of a team which is dropping these names that are steeped in racism and intolerance. Change is starting. Will it happen overnight? Unlikely. Will it be easy or pain-free? Unlikely. Will we still have to deal with the voices of hatred and division? Most likely we will. But human rights and social justice are not withering. The response of the world to the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis in the summer of 2020 during a pandemic, and the awakening of the fact that human rights and social justice is not an issue for other, it's an issue for everyone, each of us, every country. gives me hope. Human rights are flourishing. They're not withering. And as long as we maintain that hope, I think we're in a good position. I want to thank you all for allowing me to participate in this very important conference. I cannot stress enough how honored I was when Father George, our parish priest here at Santa Maria Goretti Church in Edmonton, and Father Denny, your principal of your esteemed college, asked me if I would be interested in participating in this seminar and sharing my personal views and some of my personal experiences. I was more than honored. And conversations like the one we are having today are so necessary if we're going to achieve what our former Canadian Prime Minister, Pierre Trudeau, in fact, he's the father of our current Prime Minister, Justice Trudeau. Pierre Trudeau championed the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and he championed it in the hopes of creating what he called a just society. A just society was a society where the rights of minorities and the vulnerable would be safe from the whims of an intolerant majorities. The work of the Sons of the Immaculate Conception and the vision and mission of St. Mary's College, in my view, strive to achieve this just society. Democracy, social justice, and human rights are very fragile. The election of Donald Trump and other populists like him who practice the rhetoric of division and hatred and intolerance demonstrates how fragile that democracy is. Thus, it is the responsibility of everyone to nurture democracy, to nurture social justice, and to nurture human rights. Together, we can safeguard human rights and protect our most vulnerable and each other. Before I say goodnight, as it is Tuesday evening here, I want to acknowledge that in the present preparation of my remarks, I have reviewed several articles, including some from the United Nations, the Government of Canada and Alberta, the Office of the Child and Youth Advocate for Alberta and British Columbia. I have consulted articles and programs from the CBC, from CTV, CNN, the Toronto Star, Global News, Reuters, the Alberta Civil Liberties Research Centre, and a paper by Associate Professor Mona Paré at the Faculty of Law at the University of Ottawa, and an article by Neil Price and Emis Akabari from the University of Toronto. Again, the views I have expressed here today are my own. I do not represent the Government of Canada nor the Government of Alberta in any way. Also, my remarks are not meant to be comprehensive in any way. I hope that my remarks will give you food for thought and encourage you to continue on your journey to help human rights flourish and not wither, to continue on your journey for the betterment of humankind. Thank you, everyone. Good night or good morning. Take care and God bless.
No peace without development. No development without peace. And there is no lasting peace and sustainable development without respect for human rights and rules. Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable insight on this topic. We are honored to have you here. Thank you so much. Next, I would like to welcome Reverend Father Varghese Kochparambal, Administrator, Luji Bhavan Campus, for the felicitation. Sir, please.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Dear Reverend Father, Denny Cholapallil, our beloved principal, Reverend Father Jose Matthew Parrail, Chairman of St. Mary's College, Dr. Arun, the resource person of this day, Mrs. Antonella, our chief guest, other dignitaries, faculties of St. Mary's College, students, and all other participants. Very good morning and warm welcome to all of you. Dear friends, as St. Mary's College is celebrating its silver jubilee, college initiated this webinar on this very relevant topic of the time. And we have an international participation as well as very eminent personalities from different parts of the world are presenting this topic in their own view from different places. Today, as we are part of this seminar and the initiative of St. Mary's College, I am so proudly appreciate the college team for choosing such a relevant topic for our discussion and bring the notice of every participant. Today, as St. Mary's is celebrating its silver jubilee, its presence in this area where its service of 25 years led a big number of people from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, and enabled them to be aware of their rights and teach them how to protect the right of others. I understand the justice, the right, the human right of one is the responsibility of the other. It should not be violated. For this matter, let both of them must have a proper understanding about the human rights as well as the responsibility to protect the rights of others. So with this seminar, I hope and pray all the participants may be enriched and made aware of their own rights as well as the rights of others, and it is in view of the responsibility. I appreciate the principal and the team for choosing this subject and having wonderful personalities, eminent personalities from different parts of the world, and many participants, such a way to organize this very well, and it will be a mark in the life of St. Mary's. And I wish and pray that may St. Mary's grow higher and higher. And on the occasion of its jubilee, I wish all the best. And also I wish all the best to all the participants, as well as the eminent personalities who present the papers in this seminar. So as we are in this digital platform, joined together from different parts of the world, shares our own views and ideas, such a way to unite it for a better cause. So I wish all the best to all the participants and the organizers of this webinar, and I wish all the best to St. Mary's College. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much to everybody.
Thank you, Father. Next, I would like to welcome Dr. K.K. Balachandran, Head of the Department of Commerce and Management Studies, for the felicitation. So, please.
Respected dignitaries, research scholars, teachers, and other participants of the seminar, a very good morning to all. It's really a moment of pride for St. Mary's College to organize this international webinar on a much relevant topic, human rights. In the modern globalized world, the concept of humanity is changing. The culture is changing in the globalized era, and cross-cultural relations emerge. Hence, there is greater relevance for protection of human rights and the right to be human. Equality in our everyday life is becoming a nightmare. In every walk of human life, violation of human rights are on the increase. And such violations can be noted in the field of education, security, housing, healthcare, enforcement of law, leisure, culture, gender, the family life, and in every walk of life, this type of human life violations can be noted. In my opinion, this seminar on human rights will be a prelude to a healthy discussion for the protection of human rights and the emergence of a healthy civil society. I take this opportunity to congratulate the organizers for selecting such a topic of relevance and wish the seminar all success. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are now moving on to the most awaited session by our honored guest, Dr. Arun Kumar. For that, I invite Dr. Sudarshan Kumar, Head of the Department of Chemistry, to chair the session. So, please.
Distinguished dignitaries and delegates, it is with immense pleasure that I chair this session on human rights as a part of the international webinar organized by our college. Today, to talk to us, we have a very distinguished personality, Dr. Arun Kumar, a terrific TV personality and a political scientist, to talk to us on human rights. I'm very sure that he will highlight a first-hand experience of human rights violations that are going on. And without taking much of a time, and eager to hear from him, I hand over to him to give his presentation in this session on human rights. Thank you.
Now, Now, let me take some moment to introduce Dr. Arun Kumar, our chief guest. Dr. Arun Kumar started his career joining as assistant professor in various government colleges in Kerala. Since 2002, he has been part of many media shows as moderator and quite popular among news and current affairs followers in Kerala. As an election analyst, he has been part of the research and analysis wing of many election electronic and collaborated with Doordarshan for election analysis during 2004 to 2009. He has won Kerala State Television Awards for the Best Presenter in the year 2016 and 2019. He was also the Associate Editor of Malayalam News Channel 24 during October 2018 to March 2020. During 2012 to 18, he had served as the state coordinator of Parliamentary Literacy Clubs, an initiative of Institute of Parliamentary Affairs, Government of Kerala. He was a master trainer in the workshops for training teacher coordinators of the Model Parliament project of the Institute. He was a motivational trainer for the higher secondary school students under Pathfinder project of Government of Kerala. He was awarded the Young Social Scientist Award by the University of Mauritius in 2010 in the 3rd International Congress of Environmental Research at Redute, Mauritius. He had been part of the Lognidi team of Center for the Study of Developing Societies, New Delhi, as investigator and the research participant. He was a member of Board of Studies for undergraduate program in the University of Calicut. He secured first rank in BA Political Science from University of Kerala in the year 1999, and again first rank in MA Political Science from University of Kerala in the year 2001. He was awarded PhD by University of Kerala in the year 2015. His research areas include human rights, democracy, secularism, media, post-truth politics, constitutional morality, and social justice. He was a recipient of Dr. Ramaswamy Mudaliar Gold Medal from the University of Kerala in the year 2001. And also he attained Professor K.V. Nandan Menon Prize from University of Kerala in the year 2001. He had delivered an invited talk in the International Media Conference at Houston in Texas, USA in September 2019. He also presented papers in more than 30 national and international conferences and published more than 25 articles in various journals and dailies. He also coordinated 2 surveys in Kerala for election analysis for electronic media. He was also our invited guest to take class for the political science students on 12th August 2020. We are really very happy and glad to have him again. With much respect and honor, let me welcome Dr. Arun Kumar, sir. Please, sir.
Thank you, Anupama, and thank you, Sudarshan Kumar, sir, for your kind words. And I thank Dr. Denny for inviting me for this international webinar. First of all, I want to tell you one thing. For the next 20 or 25 minutes, what I'm going to present is a pessimistic view of an academic on human rights. Though we had a very optimistic presentation done by our international guest, Mrs. Antonella Soria Bruno, but I'm going to deviate from the path she has taken. I know always the Canadian people, like their Prime Minister, very optimistic in their political vision. But as an academic living in India, where gross human rights violations are the general rule, and human right protection and human right preservation is an exception, I must differ on the kind of argument she has raised now. I will just begin with what Marx wrote in 1843 on Jewish question, one of the wonderful book. On that book, he made, before human right get institutionalized with the charters, norms, and universal declaration of human right, much before that, Karl Marx wrote, none of these so-called rights of man. He was writing in response to Thomas Paine and Edmund Burke human right discourse. Go beyond egoistic man man is a member of civil society, that is an individual withdrawn into himself. That means the human rights, what does the human mean? According to Karl Marx, the human in human right meant none but an individual who is very egoistic to the core, an individual withdrawn into himself. So this was one of the Marxian reading of a human right. You can probably say that always Marx was opposite, or Marx opposed the liberal perspectives on human rights and the rights of man, everything. But living in India, where the human rights concepts are debated, researched, and presented with a kind of a taken for granted mentality, I usually differ with academicians. Don't take a human right as a concept as a taken for granted concept. Why do I say so? Upendra Bakshi wrote something very important. Upendra Bakshi said, as what John Rawls said in his theory of justice, that the lexicon of liberty doesn't apply to all sections of society in the same way. That means all the people, that means there is no universality for the concept of a human right. I argue the same line. There is no concept for human right, universality of a human right. That means the right of a man who is living in the rural areas in Attapadi is totally different from a human right of an individual living in the Westminster in Britain, or New York, or in United States of America, or even Canada, in Toronto in Canada. Human rights differ in its cultural milieu. So it is cultural specific, it is context specific, and it is class specific human right. So the universality of human right in the broader political sense, I don't agree with that. Having said this, I just want to share my single line argument in this presentation. As the title of this international webinar suggests, in a post-human condition, in a post-truth condition, human rights are the casualty. Post-truth means you are giving more emphasis upon propaganda, you are relying upon propaganda, you are relying upon emotions, you are relying upon the manipulations, you are relying upon the rhetoric, what we call as the Trump rhetoric. So the Trumpian rhetoric way, that clearly refers to the idea of post-truth. In a post-truth society, human rights will not be in the foreground. Human rights will always be lagging behind. There will be a gap between the promise and the realization in terms of a human right in a post-truth society. I will put this phrase like this: as the world moves more right in the direction politically, human rights will wither so fastly. When the world moves right in its political dimension, it is the human right which is going to be affected very seriously. So as the world moves more politically right, human rights will wither fastly. In India, as we know, most of the time, the political regimes are moving either between the center and either between the left of center and the right, or the center and the right. Now the Indian political regime is moving towards the right direction, the right corner of the political spectrum. So in that sense, the human rights conditions in India is not only withering away, but even the debates on human rights itself considered as what you call the sedition, as what we witnessed in the case of Father Stan Swami recently. Anybody who is arguing, anybody who is considering themselves as a human right champion or a human right activist are caught in these eyes of state as somebody who is engaging in an anti-national activity or a sedition activity. So if you become a human rights activist in India, there is every likelihood that your dossier will be prepared by the union government. You will be put under surveillance. You will be always put under surveillance, and the state's spy eyes will be following you. And I will give you some statistics. With that, I will try to prove what I said. Some of the statistics are very disturbing. Point number one, the kind of gap in Indian society in terms of its income, in terms of resources, India is witnessing a tremendous gap between the haves and the have-nots. And I will give you what the Constitution says with respect to the income and the kind of resources which resource distribution in India. In India, Indian Constitution Directive Principles of State Policy, Article 38 says, the state shall, in particular, strive to minimize the inequalities in income and endeavor to eliminate inequalities in status, facilities, and opportunities. The Constitution stands for minimizing the income inequalities. So the policy of the state should be directed in a way to minimize maximum income inequality. The disparities should be minimum. That is the spirit of the Constitution. That is the direction given by Constitution to the policymakers. But what happened in India after we are celebrating 75th independence of Indian Republic? India. The Republic, India became a republic in 1950. And we have almost passed 7 decades after India became a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. After the 7 decades of Indian freedom, what happened to Indian Constitution and its promise? Article 38 says that there should be minimum income inequality. But the reality says around 10% of the Indian population holds around 79% of the total national wealth. We are speaking about human right. Human right of 77% of the Indian population holding, 10% of the Indian population holding more than 70% of the Indian national wealth. And you know, there is a very interesting statistics. It would take around 920 years. 920 years will be taken for a rural labor to earn what the top paid multinational corporate executive gets in a year. 940 years will be a period of work that a rural labor needs to equalize his income with a top paid executive in a multinational corporate in India in a year. So that kind of a starking income disparity existing in Indian polity. So with this difference in income, when you conceive a human right, then it will become problematic. The human right of a person who is in the lowest realm, in the lowest row, or in the lowest class in the economic spectrum, the human right is something different from those who are in the above, in the top. That means the income, as the Constitution promises, the state is not doing anything at all to decrease this income disparity, but rather what happened or what reflects on the ground for the last 10 years, around 100 millionaires are coming to the forefront. At the same time, the persons living in the poverty line are increasing in their actual number. So what will you consider as the promise given by the Constitution in terms of the protection of the human right of liberty, or the liberty of the person who is living in the lowest class and the liberty of the person who is in the highest class? Here, you have to take into account what Marx perceived in 1893 on Jewish question. Human right, what we meant here in the European literature, or what you call in the liberal world, pertains to the concept of the propertied class only. Propertied class only. And I will give you one more statistics that will be more interesting. The gender representation in parliament and the political forums. In India, now the Lok Sabha consists of around 78 women MPs, the highest ever female representation in Indian Lok Sabha. 78 women MPs are there in Indian Lok Sabha. Remember, this is just 14% of Indian population. After 7 decades of India became republic, India became socialist, India became sovereign, India became a democratic republic. Only 14% of the women represent in the Lok Sabha. Remember, in India, from this election commission statistics, it is revealed that more than women vote in Indian polity. More than men, there are female voters, but their representation is just 14%. Think what happened to that. Here, I will come to you one more interesting statistics. Between 1945 and 2005, if you take the entire world, the number of sovereign states with a parliament has increased 7-fold. That means the number of parliaments, the number of sovereign states, the states which got decolonized, the states which got sovereignty, the states which got freedom from their colonial masters, they started new constitution, they prepared, drafted new constitution, and with the new constitution, they started new parliament, and they experimented with parliament, and they were almost 7-fold increase in the number of parliament in India, in the world, from 1945 to 2005. 7-fold increase of parliament, the institution of democracy. But there are only 4% of women representation increase in the same period. Even though the number of parliaments increased 7-fold, the women representation increased only 4-fold. What does it indicate? In the world, when you speak about human right, it is man which is getting more emphasis on this right perspective rather than female. That's why Upendra Bakshi called. It is not properly. It is not politically correct to call human right, but rather you call Hooper right. Hooper, H-U-P-E-R. Hooper right means the personal. Hooper, person. It is not gendered. That's why the Hansa Mehta, Indian representation in the United Nations, when they prepared Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1945, this Hansa Mehta corrected and rectified Eleanor Roosevelt's concept of human right. Eleanor Roosevelt drafted UDHR, and the preamble of the UDHR said like this: all men are equally born, like that. But when Hansa Mehta intervened, she tried to correct Eleanor Roosevelt. Don't use all men, but rather use all persons. All persons. So, from a masculine perspective, from a patriarchal mindset, the literature of a human right, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, was changed with the intervention of an Indian woman, and her name is Hansa Mehta. But the same India which trails behind in terms of women representation. In India, we have only 14% of women representation in the parliament. Then whose rights are we speaking about? Are we speaking about the rights of female? Are we speaking about the rights of the rural labor who takes more than 900 years to equalize his income with that of a highly paid multinational corporate executive in Mumbai? That's a question. Every 90 seconds, one woman dies during pregnancy or childbirth in a country like India. Living in a third world condition, we are speaking about a human right. We are speaking about the human right and the protection of the human right, which is almost having a first world connotation in many respects. The kind of dignity we are speaking of, what kind of a dignity for a person who is in fact tortured and kept kept behind bars. You know, more than 70% of the prisoners in India are under trials. It's for them Father Stan Swami came and made his voices against. It's for him he tried to mobilize people and to put focus of the entire world. What's happening to the under trials? 70% of the prisoners are spending their lives as under trials in different prisons in India for more than 1 year. Under trials are increasing. Number of under trials are increasing. The kind of income gap is dividing. Underrepresentation of women in parliament. Still, we believe that we have an agenda. This is what we call post-truth society. In a post-truth society, we try to hide these human rights violations with the glory and the glow of the kind of propaganda and the feel-good images. And here comes another concept of development. A liberal democratic state, especially when they try to embark upon their right perspective, that means nationalist agenda along religious lines, they try to use development as a development as a masquerading, or development as a concept to cover up their human rights violations. For this, they resorted to propaganda. They always say that India is waging war against Pakistan. That's India is good. But Indian farmers are dying. Indian farmers are dying due to the failure of their crops, their price decline, and the farmers are protesting in the national capital, and the country is celebrating the kind of freedom and the kind of independence which are politically not fully right in a sense. And I will just show you another gap. Certain principles of policy to be followed by the state. Article 39 says in the Indian Constitution, the state shall in particular direct its policy towards securing that all citizens, men and women, equally have the right to an adequate means of livelihood. Indian Constitution wanted Indian population to be adequately fed, adequately or nutritiously taken care of. And the reality is this: in India, 29.5% in rural areas and 26.5% in urban areas, that means more than 30-35 crore of Indian population, they live less than 32 rupees in rural and 47 rupees in urban area. Less than 47 rupees they are living in the urban areas in India. It's almost 26.5%. So when you speak about a human right, then the human right will become universal in the nation. If universal become a human right, what sort of human right what we are speaking when more than 26% of the Indian population live in urban areas with less than 47 rupees per day. 39B says, Indian Constitution, that the ownership and control of the material resources of the community are so distributed as best to subserve the common good. That means the common resources should not be distributed to get any kind of monopoly. That means it should not be sold privately. No privatization of common good. That is the gist and the spirit of Indian Constitution. Remember, a river was sold. Perhaps you may be ahead of it. That was in Madhya Pradesh, and the company name was Radius Water Limited. Around 22.7 kilometer of Shivanath River was handed over. When Chhattisgarh was taken from Madhya Pradesh, the Shivanath River was sold to a private company. 22 kilometers was sold. So the common man cannot have an access to the drinking water from this river. Sold to a private enterprise. 22.7 kilometers of riverbed was sold to a private enterprise. What kind of life we have? What we are speaking about human rights? And recently, the Lakshadweep administrator tried to evict the people of Lakshadweep from their land for development purpose. Eviction from their land, displacement, in fact, marks one of the most human rights violations the developmental Indian state embarked upon. So when India becomes more developmental, I fear India will become more violative of the constitutional right. The human right of the persons, especially the tribe people. In India, the tribes people are the most vulnerable section who got displaced due to all forms of development, in whether it's dams, whether it's townships, whether it's highways, whether it is Grand Trunk Road, whether it is trains, whatever may be, the tribes are the most affected in a population called India. So India become more developmental, but at the same time, human rights are withering away. That's why I'm not taking the perspective of the presenter who presented before me, that it is not flourishing of democracy what we are witnessing in a country like India, living a third world condition. Article 39, Indian Constitution says, 39E, that the health and the strength of workers, men and women, and the tender age of children are not abused, and that citizens are not forced by economic necessity to enter avocations unsuited to their age of strength. That means no child labor and no bonded labor, and the health of the workers must be taken care of. Remember, in India, the Bonded Labor Liberation Front placed about 10 million bonded children in India alone in 2000, increased to 12.5 million child labor in India. The labor force, around 90% are belonging to unorganized sector. The large volume affected by the COVID pandemic, affected by the affected by the lockdown, which was declared without any notification, without any notice. They were stranded in Mumbai. They were stranded in Delhi. We have witnessed the migrant laborers who suffered a lot during the time of the post-lockdown period. So what happened? In that sense, the migrant laborers or the unorganized workforce, which accounts for 90% of Indian population, 90% of the Indian population are without any kind of human rights in the Indian context. So again, but the state get elected, or the political party or the regime gets re-elected in the 2019 election, despite these human rights violations in India. Why? This is a very interesting question. Even though the human rights of the most of the persons are not in a taken care of manner, are not preserved, are not protected, but still they vote for the political regime, they in fact do nothing for them. It's not only for a particular political party. They elected a government, they violated their human right. This is just because of the power of propaganda and the power of the politically right, politically indoctrinated sect of society, which believes not in human right, but in the kind of propaganda of their particular ideology, whatever it be, let it be cultural nationalism or the BJP or anything else for the Congress. So if you take each constitutional promises which protect and guards human rights of Indian population, most of the time these rights and the promises are violated on grounds. So that's why I'm asking again and again, human rights, if you conceive it in a single linear correlation, like more democracy, more human right, more election, more human rights, it's something problematic. Human rights are often violated in the name of development, but often that human right violations are covered, or rather it was transcended by the state, or the legitimacy crisis created by the human right violations of the developmental states are covered by propaganda, by resorting to propaganda. Whenever there is a human right violation, of course the state will come with a kind of a political propaganda. So propaganda, in fact, eclipses its human right violations by the state itself. So if you go more right in the political direction, there are that means the human right violations are maximum in that context. So if the entire world, let it be in Brazil, let it be in Egypt, let it be in Russia, let it be in the Trump America, now the Biden took over it, and we have some hope in that way. If the world is moving more towards the right perspective, of course, there will be human right in theory, but there will be human right violation in practical, on ground. This is what I want to tell you. I think in the single point, I will conclude. So what we have to look upon, theoretically, we have to look upon not equality of opportunity, but rather the focus should be on equal access to material resources. Both are different. A politically right, liberalized political regime always focus upon, yes, you have equality of opportunity. Equality of opportunity is given for a person who is struggling a lot, working within the unorganized sector, labor force, who has to work more than 900 years to increase his income with a multinational corporate executive. Both are given equality of opportunity. This is injustice. So we have to redefine distributive justice to ensure not the equality of opportunity, but rather we have to ensure equal access to resources. Equal access to resources is a very difficult concept. Perhaps it's an idealistic concept in a way, because we are living in such a context where equality of opportunity there, but opportunities are graded. When opportunities are graded, in the sense the access to that opportunity is graded. A person living in the rural sector not heard about these human right discourses can't understand the issues of human right violations in a sense. And I will tell you what happened to the women folks in India. They are underrepresented. I told you only 14% of women are represented, or women MPs are there in Lok Sabha, while we have more than 51% are belonging to the female sector among the voters. They have only 14% share in the Lok Sabha. Then, but even then, the family system and the political system uses the kind of a post-truth political tactics to give them the feel that they are taken care of, they are represented. For example, last time when the Ujjwal Gas Yojana scheme was introduced by the union government, there were many questions, and one of the questions was, yes, it's a positive measure, it's a progressive measure. Yes, of course, it's a progressive measure from the what do you call from the smoke driven kitchen. Women who could save their life and health in a when they shifted their kitchen from the traditional mode to the new mode, the gas kitchens. But remember, in a way, you are institutionalizing unpaid labor by this progressive policy. What did I mean? You know, in India, one of the most important human right violation happens not in the state. Of course, there are the police, as what Chief Justice of India said. Police constitute the police is the agency who commits more human right violations than any other agencies in India. Of course, I accept that, but beyond that, family is the hatchery of what you call the human right violations. Family itself is a hatchery of human right violations. I will tell how does it become a human right violation. Number one, Constitution is not allowed in your kitchen. Constitution is not allowed in your bedroom. Human rights are not allowed in your living room. Human rights are not allowed in the kitchen in the sense where the unpaid labor is recruited, unpaid labor is performed, unpaid labor is burned out in kitchen. More time, women spend time in kitchen which are not having even a single chair, where they are not working with their brain, but they are working with their sensation. Remember, human rights are violated in kitchen rather than human rights are violated on the street. Human rights are violated in the bedroom. Even in India, when we are living in the 21st century in 2021, marital rape is not a rape. A husband can rape a wife. It is legally permissible for a husband to rape a wife. That is the definition given to the concept of rape in Indian Penal Code. Marital rape is not an offense in India. Even though it constitutes a cause for divorce, it is not an offense which can be punished. So human rights are not there in your kitchen. Human rights are not there in your bedroom. Human rights are not there in your living room. So in a post-truth human condition or a post-truth society, human rights are more violated in our domestic spaces rather than the political spaces. Of course, when the political space goes more right, human rights are violated more. In the domestic sense, we are having a kind of a conservative domestic space commits more human rights violations rather than what we have in the public sphere. I think I will conclude here. I will take some questions and then we will have some interactions. Of course, there should be some persons who should disagree with me what I told, all these things. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will have a discussion now. Shall we, sir? Audience, you're requested to put your queries in the chat box. So we will wait for a few minutes.
Sure.
Audience, please put your queries in the chat box. Please be aware of the time that we have to keep our session on schedule. Shall we wait for a few seconds?
Yes, please.
So we do have a question in the chat box. I hope you can see that.
Yeah, from Roshima.
Yeah.
What about statistical literacy to the poor? As major governments are playing with the data, people from rural areas are not in full access to it, and it can have taken as a reason for the government getting elected again. So what can be the solution? What about statistical literacy to the poor? Okay, it's not because we have illiteracy, we elect the wrong people. Rather, I am not saying that it is not the wrong people, it is the systemic issue. Election happens in different plane and your life happens in a different ground. For example, for the last couple of years, what happened in Indian politics is very interesting to understand, interesting to observe. One is, you get elected if you get hit. You elect your representative if they give you some freebies. What happened in Tamil Nadu, if they provide TV, of course, the political mandate is given. In Kerala, kids are given, fine, you are voting for them. Pensions are given, we will vote for them. It's a kind of when politics becomes a market-oriented project, voter become consumer. When voter becomes consumer, politics becomes business. In that sense, a political manager, like a marketing manager, knows better to capture the mind and imagination of a voter. It is not illiteracy with the Indian people or the Indian voter that is wrong with the system, but rather the political communication from the top or the political executive manage politically rather than they interact and live up to the expectations of the people. In that sense, politics became a business. Voter became a consumer. Politician became a political manager. So election happens in that way. But the human rights violations are happening in the ground. That's a stark reality. And the political executives override and overcome it with the help of propaganda through media, through social media, and through their party forums and through their WhatsApp. So there is no solution. The only solution is you have to be better armed. You have to arm yourself against the post-truth discourses in the society. Can you speak honestly with the scientific temper? If you speak with a scientific temper, of course, you have to question the systems around you, including religion. You have to question, including the religious intervention in the state politics. For example, the last issue, the issue. Why people are making huge cries with respect to film issue? It's a propaganda by the rightist forces, and some people are playing fiddle to them. And the last vlogger issue, again a post-truth kind of thing. If there is a violation on the the traffic violations are there, the motor vehicle department is supposed to take action against them. But they try to manipulate things first instance. Many people are going after them. It is not true because of illiteracy. So we have to take a rational choice. For that, the voter must be very rational in their thought process. For that purpose, they have to be very scientifically, they have to organize things. So the scientific temper is the most important thing that we need to cultivate to be a better voter rather than a political consumer. Sadiq is asking a question. Do the journalists of India are actually able to express the real situation of India as some oppressive laws like 124? Yeah, of course. We are always against the sedition laws and the kind of the state activity against these human rights people, human rights activists like Father Stan Swami, Hanibanu, etc. But the issue is that when they write, of course, they are caught under the purview of the sedition charges. They are put under surveillance. What happened, Pegasus, we know. It includes the judiciary, the number of the mobile numbers of judicial persons, the mobile number of politicians, mobile number of opposition leaders, mobile number of journalists like Gopi Krishan and other people who investigate into some of the activities of union government. Pegasus is tapping their phone. Now, what is your opinion about development? What could be a sustainable model of development according to you, especially in the areas vulnerable population is present? Of course, that we have to think of, because I studied personally about Sardar Sarovar project across Narmada, and I know the human rights violations are maximum there, especially among the tribal population who got displaced from the 3 states accommodated on the outskirts of Baroda, on the outskirts of some of the cities in Maharashtra. They were living poor life condition. Most of them either committed suicide or they went to the urban areas as casual contract laborers, bonded laborers. They ended up their life as bonded laborers. So when the government takes a policy of a particular project, first, you have to ensure that there should be minimum human rights violations in terms of displacement. For ensuring that, you have different models and go with the model that gives maximum advantages to the minimum, maximum advantages to the least advantageous section. That is what the justice as fairness, what John Rule says. You have to, that what Gandhi once told about talisman. You have to remember the face of the poorest man in the society. Then your confusion will be over. If you have any confusion over any kind of development project, think about how does the poorest man get benefit out of this project, rather than increase in the stock market, rather than increase in the share market. You have to think about the smile on the face of a poor man. In that sense, you can say it is not a share market that reflects the real political content, but rather it is the smile on the face of the poor farmer that should be the yardstick for a politician to define and to reach a conclusion with respect to development project. So in a way, sustainable development project is not only economically sustainable, but rather it should be human rightly legitimate project. It should be legitimized. So legitimation should be there. Only then it will become sustainable in a way, politically sustainable in a way, rather than economically, environmentally, or ecologically sustainable. Then, Prashu, what do you think is the influence of social media currently in creating human rights awareness as well as a misinterpretation about the same among the public? It is us many times other modes of communication. Social media is having the same problem. It can be used as a weapon to cure and to attack. It's like a knife. You can use it for making operations, but at the same time you can kill with it. So it's a double-edged weapon in a sense. So social media, you think about the human rights issues of Danish Siddiqui. When Danish Siddiqui was killed, it is not only the mainstream media, it is the social media. In fact, it came heavily on him. It is with the visuals of Reuters published the visuals of Danish Siddiqui, the COVID post COVID conditions of Delhi, when you reacted strongly against it. So social media can do that, but the issue is that there are no gatekeepers in social media. There are no editors in social media. So a single person's imagination may not be right all the time. It cannot beat a collective consciousness of an editorial team. So what we need is an editorial board, an editorial team, which can scrutinize the news, critically approach things, and not taking the statements of the political leaders as granted, even not taking the human rights concept academically granted. We have to ask questions. Whose human rights we are talking about? Are we talking about the human rights of the West? Are we talking the human rights of the persons who are culturally vulnerable, who are economically vulnerable? So these are the questions that we have to write. Okay.
With your permission, sir?
Yes, please.
Shall we stop the discussion session?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay, so that was wonderful. Thank you so much, sir. The session was really informative, and we are honored to have you here. Thank you so much.
Gratitude is the fairest blossom which springs from the soul. Gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. Let me call Mrs. Deepthi, Assistant Professor from the Department of Commerce and Management Studies, to deliver word of thanks.
Good morning to one and all present here. I am feeling honored to get this opportunity to deliver word of thanks on the first session of two-day international webinar on post-truth era with the human rights. Organizing international conference is a challenging task. This cannot be possible without a great preparation, wise working hands, support from every corner, and blessings. Now, it's time to convey my gratitude to all who have extended their support to make this event successful. On behalf of organizing committee, I would like to express my profound gratitude to our beloved principal, Reverend Father Denny Cholapale, for his blessings and motivation. Father, you are our source of motivations and energy. Thank you, Father, for your blessings always. My humble thanks to Reverend Father Jose Matthew Pare, Provincial Superior of CFIC India and Chairman of St. Mary's College, for the exceptional leadership, guidance, and motivation to all. Thank you, Father, for your motivation and guidance. I am happy to offer sincere thanks to Mr. Sandeep, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce and Management, and also convener of two-day international webinar, who organized this event excellently and put a lot of effort to make this event successful. Thank you, sir, for your great effort. I would like to express my deep gratitude to Reverend Father Verghese Kochiparambil, Administrator, Luigi Bhavan Campus. Thank you, Father, for your generous support. I am happy to express my profound gratitude to Dr. K.K. Balachandran, HOD, Department of Commerce and Management, who gave us full support, guidance, and encouraged us to make this international webinar successful. Thank you, sir, for your support and guidance. Ladies and gentlemen, my words may not be capable to express my immense gratitude to our Honorable Chief Guest, Mrs. Antonella Soria Bruno, lawyer, barrister, and solicitor, Ministry of Justice, Government of Alberta, Canada, for taking time out of her from your busy schedule. Thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation and sparing your valuable time with us today. The views regarding human violations and social justice you shared today is very informative and knowledgeable to us. Thank you. I express my profound gratitude to Mr. Arun Kumar, journalist, 24 News Channel. Beside his busy schedule, he accepted our invitation and shared a lot of thoughts and views about human rights. Sir, your presence here today has been invaluable support to us. Thank you so much, sir. I also take this opportunity to congratulate all the participants, those who are going to present their paper today. Last but not least, I would like to express my deep gratitude to all my dear colleagues and my dear students who are presented here to make the event successful. Once again, I thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Here is an information for the paper presenters. We will begin the paper presentation within a few minutes, and I request all the scholars to be ready with your paper and PPT. Rules and regulations during paper presentation. Please listen. The time limit of each presentation is 10 minutes. This will be followed by a short discussion of 2 to 3 minutes. You can expect questions from the judging panel and from the audience. Please take care not to exceed the time to keep our session on schedule. The moderator will coordinate the session and will act as a vigilant timekeeper. The participants are requested to present their paper in PPT format. We strongly recommend that. We have a panel of judges to value the paper presentation, and their decisions will be final. In case of any technical issues or delay from the participant during the presentation, for the time being, we will move on to the next participant, but don't get panicked. You will be given another chance for the presentation, and the time will be informed personally. Here are some information for the audience. Audience, please listen. You are allowed to ask questions during the discussion after the presentation, and please put your queries to the chat box. Ensure that the questions are respectful. We will not advocate disrespectful questioning. For the audience to get a participation certificate, you are requested to fill the feedback form from which we will be providing in the valedictory session of day 2. I repeat, audience, you're requested to fill the feedback form, which we will be providing in the valedictory session of day 2. Thank you.
Before we start our section, let me introduce our judges. Jayesh G, currently working as Assistant Professor, Department of HNSS GITAM School of Gandhian Studies, deemed to be University Visakhapatnam. He completed his MA in Development Studies from Mahatma Gandhi University, Kottayam, Kerala, and Political Science from the IGNOU, New Delhi. He also completed his MPhil in Research and Development, Gandhigram Rural University, Dindigul, Tamil Nadu, and PhD in Politics and International Studies, Pondicherry University. He also had completed International Summer Course on Human Rights and Natural Law, an intercultural philosophical perspective from the Catholicate University, Germany. Our next judge, Professor Remy Joseph. Dr. Remy Joseph was a professor of the Department of Commerce and Management Studies at the University of Calicut. He was a former director of UGC HRDC University of Calicut for more than 5 years and coordinator of the School of Management Studies for 11 years in the University of Calicut. He was a former Dean Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies, former Chairman of Board of Studies in Commerce, and was also an elected member of the Academic Council of the University of Calicut, representing the teachers of Management Studies. He was also the Chief Coordinator of MBA courses of the university and the Coordinator SDE MBA course from the University of Calicut. He had the additional charge of the Coordinator UGC Net Cell of the university for the June 2014 test. He has about 27 years of research and teaching experience. PhD degrees were awarded to 8 scholars under his supervision, and 7 persons are doing research leading to PhD MPhil degrees were also awarded to 16 research scholars. He published 14 edited books, 16 book chapters are published, 37 research articles in national journals, and has participated in about 90 international, national, state-level seminars, workshops, out of which 45 cases he has either acted as a resource person or presented papers. Our next judge, Dr. K.K. Balachandran sir, HOD from the Department of Commerce and Management, St. Mary's College, Puthanangadi. I welcome all the judges.
Participants participants
Please listen. It's 12 now. We will have the paper presentation up to 12:45, and we hope to complete 4 presentations by 12:45. Those who are presenting the paper, scholars, please get ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we are going to begin the presentation. Hope all the scholars are ready with your paper and PPT. We humbly request you to follow the rules mentioned here. With immense pleasure, I would like to invite Remy Joseph and Tito Verghese for the presentation. Ma'am, please. Hello, ma'am. Your slide is okay. You can start the presentation now.
And the problem is that I can't start the slideshow.
Ma'am, you can just press on the enable icon.
Okay, let me see, please.
Ma'am, please press on the enable editing option.
Okay, let me. Okay. Can you see this?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine, ma'am.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. First of all, sorry for this delay. My name is Remy Joseph, Assistant Professor in Carmel College, Mohama. This is a combined paper done in collaboration with Father Tito Verghese, Assistant Professor in Reisner College, Maravallur. Moving on. The title of the paper is Judiciary in Ventilator? Lessons from Father Stan Swami's Death. Human rights are basic or fundamental rights of human beings given by the Constitution for being a human being. Father Stanislaus Lord Swami, popularly known as Stan Swami, is a human rights activist, unfortunately a victim of human rights violation. The major objective of our study is to understand how the mainstream Malayalam channels, experts and the public responded to the Stan Swami issue. The methodology used is the content analysis of 3 news-hour debates in leading Malayalam news channels based on their popularity measured by the number of comments. The channels we analyzed are Manorama, Asianet and Media. Moving on to the findings and analysis. We analyzed how the government and related agencies intervene and interfere in denying and delaying human rights and justice to people in custody. Father Stan Swami is an example for the cruelty of the state-sponsored investigative agencies.
The major themes of analysis are purposeful silencing of those who speak against the authority. There is a determined attempt to silence the voices and activities of people who speak against the government. If an individual speaks for the marginalized and raises questions against the government, then he or she is forcefully silenced. That means the voice of the dissent is silenced here. Next one is continuous denial of human rights. Indian Constitution gives every citizen of India the basic right to have a respectable living. Father Stan Swami, an 84-year-old Jesuit priest, was cruelly denied his basic human right to have a decent living. The other themes are wisdom versus intelligence in judiciary. We need people with wisdom in judiciary more than people with mere intelligence or brilliance. Judiciary becomes an autocracy if there is no room for wisdom. The tragic paradox that we can see here is that Father Stan Swami himself is an human rights activist and he died denied of basic human rights. Even when he was COVID positive, he was denied bail. This person, Stan Swami, was suffering from Parkinson's disease, but the state denied him proper food and proper medical care. From this, we can understand if a human rights activist experience such a pathetic condition, what will be the condition of common man in our society? Article 21, Article 19, and Article 14 of the Indian Constitution is rejected in Stan Swami's issue. All this happens because Stan Swami stood for the common people or the marginalized and was against the government. Moving on, there is insecurity of the higher class. We can see a lot of insecurity within the higher class society. Dalit activism is an insecurity for the higher caste Hindus, says Rahul Ishwar, a political activist. Even in this 21st century, the Adivasis or Dalits are considered as untouchables. As the government supports the powerful people, they try to oppress the marginalized and the dissents. Next one is undeclared emergency. Today in India, we face an undeclared emergency where people have to be very careful not to be taken into custody. Not only Stan Swami, prominent intellectuals, lawyers, activists, writers, etc. are put in jail just because they raise their voice against government. They question the government. As a result, they are in jail. Around 3,000 young Adivasi men are under trial prisoners in Jharkhand. And father stood for the protection of these prisoners and formed committee. This was also a factor for his arrest. We can say demotivating people by denying basic rules as well. And government uses UAPA as a tool to punish the innocent. NIA or the government can easily keep the UAPA tag on anybody if they find someone as a threat to the government. This is what we see in Stan Swami's case. Next, we can see the undercurrent between the business tycoons and government. There is some sort of personal interest between business tycoons and government. The Adivasis, the real landowners, were cheated by the corporates, corporate mine mafia, with the support of the government, and it is done in the name of development. Swami was against this illegal eviction of Adivasis from their land. This was the real issue that made Swami a peck in their eyes, and as a result, it was the need of the government to implicate some sort of serious issue so that they can accuse him for some cases. As a result, he was accused in Bhima Koregaon issue with incredible evidences, actually. Next one is illogical outlook of NIA. Swami was not a culprit, he was just an accused. The evidences put forward by the NIA was illogical. NIA was actually made as an instrument by the government for this conspiracy. Next is an important point, that is fake patriotism. Nowadays, anything against the Prime Minister or government is considered treason by the supporters of the government. For example, the dissents are branded as urban Naxals or Maoists and are arrested in the name of patriotism. The new strategy implemented by the government is to arrest first and then make evidences. We can also see the sinful silence of the church. The silence of the church was pathetic in the case with Stan Swami's arrest. The church didn't stood for protecting an innocent priest from losing his life. The silence of the church is questioned by the people in all the debates. Even in the comment section, people discuss about this thing. The claim of state-sponsored terrorism is illogical. The supporters of the government came up with the argument that the state-sponsored terrorism is illogical and there is nothing called state-sponsored terrorism. They claim that we cannot say all the intellectuals are real patriots. They also proclaim trust the judiciary as a citizen. There will be some sort of reason if a person is arrested. So it is our duty to trust the judiciary. That is what the supporters ask us to do. But it is quite illogical. Next thing is what I want to say now is we are living in a society, in a country where traitors are in power and patriots are punished. The question before the court is whether to stand for the people or stand for the government. What we need today is a society which stands for those who speak for the voiceless and the marginalized. Only then we can end such institutional crimes. When fascists teach the hatred is the sacred path, Stan Swami taught the lesson of compassion, and time alone will teach what are the fruits of intolerance. So let me conclude by reminding you that it is high time to rethink whether the judiciary is in ventilator. Thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to present this paper before you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now it's time for discussion. I invite our judges. If you have any queries or any questions, please ask. Ma'am, please just hold on a minute.
I have one question. In your paper, you are trying to say that the judiciary is in ventilator.
Yes.
But the actual question is, there is some sort of failure on the part of the administration of justice. It should be done by police and other enforcement authorities, plus the rules and regulations passed by the government of India for the purpose of meeting the criminals or such other antisocial activities.
Yes.
So how can this judiciary be questioned in this particular example as an instrument for violating the human rights? Can you please clarify?
Yes, sir. Judiciary is in ventilator because I think so, because in the case, in the Stan Swami issue, we can see that he is arrested, he is accused without any proper evidence. They just the government just wanted to arrest him so that the voice of the dissent will be suppressed for a long time. Another Stan Swami should come up with his voice so that he will speak for the marginalized people. So it was the need of the government to suppress his voice. So they arrested by creating some false cases upon Father Stan Swami. And we can see that NIA had a major role in his arrest as well as in his death, because NIA did not question him after arresting this person. He was arrested on the basis that he was involved in a Bhima Koregaon issue, but actually he doesn't have any sort of involvement in that issue. Only the evidences was just cooked up by the NIA in order to arrest him. That's it. And judiciary is not at all playing a good role when such cases come before them, because in Stan Swami's issue we can see there is a continuous denial of bail. There is a continuous denial. He was not given bail at least once. He was a man who was suffering. He was not at all healthy. He was a weak person. Then also he was not given proper food or medicine. The judiciary or the state was involved in his death. That is what I want to tell you right now.
Okay, right.
Mr. Akhila Joseph,
Yes, sir.
am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you said that there is a sinful silence of the church.
Yes, sir.
And he belongs to Jesuit congregation.
Yes.
And why, I am doubtful, what were the reasons why they became silent in particular issue of human rights?
So this is a question that came in my mind as well, because the church used to involve in every activities regarding the priests or the nuns involved in the church. But in this case, they were silent. There is something skeptical about it, because actually, if a priest or someone is in jail or something like that, the bishops or the honored persons used to go and visit. At least they will try for a bail for that person. But in his case, it is not so. The church was silent. I think there is no any sort of profit if they stood for Father Stan Swami. There is some sort of they will not get anything if he is out. I think that is why, because they maybe the church will be thinking like that. These people, the Dalits or the marginalized, will be always marginalized. That is better, and silence is better for the church without involving in such issues. I think so, sir. I too have this doubt. I am also skeptical.
You made another comment.
Yes.
It was fake patriotism.
Yeah.
Can you explain it?
Yeah, yes, sir. Because in order to protect or prevent terrorism, these dissents, actually these patriots or the dissents are branded as urban Naxals or Maoists, and they are put into the jail. They are arrested. They are taken into the custody, not the real terrorists. In order to protect the terrorism from our country, in the name of patriotism, this arrest happens. That is why I mentioned it is a fake patriotism going on in India right now. Am I clear, sir?
And now it is very clear. And thank you for your presentation also.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm Jayesh. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so from your analysis, which government, maybe the central or state government, so what the role they played according to your analysis? And also you told about silence of Dalits, right? Right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So we have a president, right? From
Yes.
Dalit background. So what is your view on that? On human rights perspective. Okay.
So actually, everything happens for only a few number of people. Even from the Dalit society, only one became the president. Okay. Or Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was the pillar of the Indian Constitution. He was the one person who entered into this making of the Constitution and all. But still, there are a large number of people who are suffering even now in this country, but their voices are not heard. So there will be some activists or some people who raise their voice for them, for this minority or this subaltern people. So it is the need of the hour that we need human activists like Father Stan Swami, so that they will get some sort of human rights which they have never got before, because they are illiterate people. Basically, they are illiterate and they don't know what are human rights, or is that okay, this exploitation, we should suffer this exploitation. That will be the mindset of people. But some literate people, some intellectuals should come forward and save these people. So I think even now they are considered as minority people. So it is necessary for us to think whether this should happen or not. Like there should be human activists or someone, there should be the voice of the dissent to save these people from exploitation and violation of human rights. That's what I think.
Regarding the government, state or central government, which government?
Sir, can you please repeat it again?
Yes, regarding the government, it's like you're saying that government is silencing. Which government? Maybe the central or the state government? In this case, what is
Sir, to be specific, I think it is the BJP government, the Prime Minister, the government which is chaired by the Prime Minister, because the RSS and the BJP are not at all interested in protecting the Dalit people or the minorities. They always stood for the higher caste society or the higher caste Hindus. So that I think it is the reason. So that the powerful can change the verdicts of the court. The powerful is able to change the verdicts. The judges are corrupted. So I think the judiciary is inventilated.
That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, I would like to
Thank you,
welcome
judges.
Dr. Gigi Kumari for the paper presentation. Ma'am, please. Next, I would like to welcome Dr. Gigi Kumari for the paper presentation. Ma'am, please.
Good afternoon. Okay, then am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. Then can I share my press paper?
Yes, ma'am, of course.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Jiji Kumari, Department of Economics, St. Pius X College, Rajapuram. And here I would like to discuss the topic on human rights, sustainability, and long-term global ecological challenges, a conceptual analysis. That is human rights. That is in the morning session onwards, we are discussing about human rights. Then all of you know, human rights are fundamental rights inherent to all human beings, irrespective of their caste, color, religion, nationality, whatever it may be. Then that is in the case of human rights, exclusion principle cannot be applied. I just made them in bold letter. That is in the case of human rights, we cannot able to exclude anyone. All are included in the brackets of human rights. Okay, that means all people are included in the bracket of human rights and they are totally non-discriminatory in nature. But even though all human beings are entitled to human rights, all are not equally experiencing them. We can see in our daily life, by constitution, we are getting all these fundamental rights. At the same time, in many places and many workplace or in the home itself, we can see it is a complete violation of human rights, we can see. Then that is the first term I would like to share, that is the human rights and how the sustainable development and how the global ecological challenges, all these are connected. That is my topic. And next is about sustainability. Definitely all of you know sustainable development, that means the development that meets the needs of the present generation and without compromising the ability of the future to meet their own needs. That is the definition of sustainable development. And in that sustainable development, we can see three components. Okay, that is economic component is there, social component is there, as well as environmental component is there. Then in this regard, by connecting this with human rights, we can see the social component is most important. That is in social component highlights the importance of maintenance of human rights. That is the use of natural resource. All are equal and should maintain social justice. That is in the case of environment and for sustainable development. We should use this natural resource in an equal manner, or all people have equal right to use this natural resources to meet their needs and not meet their wants. Okay, then social component of the sustainable development is it implies the importance of human rights for the utilization of natural resource. That resource concentration in the hands of few will not allow as per this component. And suppose if there is any discrimination between haves and have-nots, that kind of development will not be sustainable. It also ensure intergeneration equity as well as intra-generation equity while considering natural resource. That is human rights. We are violating human rights not only for the present generation, but for the future also while using this natural resource especially. That is intra-generation equity we should maintain as well as intergeneration equity also. That is intra-generation means within the present generation, all people should have equal right to use this resource. And intergeneration means that is the coming generation, the future generation have also the same right to use this natural resource and the social justice we want to maintain. Then on the basis of this sustainability and human rights, definitely so many ecological challenges that we are facing now, as well as we in the long run, we are going to face a lot of global ecological challenges, such as toxic chemical pollution and cross-border transfer of dangerous waste, water pollution and freshwater resource availability, shortage of freshwater resource, marine pollution, damaged land desertification, acid rain, declining of biological diversity, sharp decrease of forest cover, ozone depletion, and different types of ecological challenges globally. It will happening now, and in the coming future, it will be very, very, very tough, or it's very dangerous manner. It may be affect. Then, by connecting all these three, my study's objective is to narrate the interrelations between human rights and sustainable development, and to trace out long-run global ecological challenges. Okay, then the human rights, I just talked about the human rights and sustainable development, the interrelation through the social component of sustainable development. And I'm tracing out some of the global ecological challenges that we are facing now, as well as in the coming future, we are born to face. Then the methodology, there's a present study builds up with the secondary data collected from various sources and books related to human rights as well as environment. And I'm trying to concentrate to integrate three concepts, namely human rights, sustainability, as well as ecological challenges that I told. Then how can we interconnect? Or how can we, what is the interrelation between these human rights and sustainability? Then definitely human rights and sustainability develop the idea of environmental obligation as long-term responsibilities in the context of human rights. Definitely, as human beings, we are using this, or we are exploiting this nature very much, and definitely we are responsible for the future generation or the human rights of the future generation. It proposes that human rights require recognition that human persons are exposed and vulnerable in the face of unsustainable conduct. Suppose if we are behaving very cruel towards our environmental resource, definitely the human rights of the present as well as future will deny, or they will affect. It explores the bottlenecks of long-term responsibility that human rights laws provides national and international level, and challenges the questions whether lifestyle restriction and enforceable in view of liberties and well-being typically is protected by human rights. That is, suppose if the natural resources are coming down or deteriorating because of this human-centric activities, definitely all the pattern or all the available resource or all the liberties and all the well-being of the coming generation will be suffered. Then we are totally denying the human rights of the future. Then in the case of ecosystem services, we can see the ecology is providing, or the environment is providing 4 important services to us. That is provision of natural resource, then life supporting system. They are accepting the waste as well as the aesthetic enjoyment. 4 important functions are there. Then in the case of this ecological service or environmental service, we are making some forces or driving forces to make some changes in this ecological services through directly as well as indirectly because of human activities. Okay, then direct driving force are the climate change, then land utilization, then technological improvement, application of the natural and man-made forces, etc. All these are driving force which make changes in the ecological services that we are getting from this environment. Then indirect forces are, we are combining 2 or more direct forces that, such as the population increase or use of technology and the consumption behavior, etc., etc. And that will also lead some changes in the ecological services. Then the long run, many of these ecosystem services will decline due to natural and anthropocentric reasons. Among these 2 human activities are speeding the destruction of ecosystem service like population as well as technological expansion. All of you know industrialization, the different technologies that we are using, and definitely the result is that the ecological services are getting ruined or it is getting deteriorating. Okay, but if human beings are approaching these ecosystem services in a very good organization or very good manner and sustainable interaction with ecosystem, human can improve their condition. Then only not to maintain our human rights or in order to achieve our human or to attain our human rights in the future, we should maintain a sustainable development and we should maintain a very good environment. That is the only thing that we can do in the future, that we can give to the future generation. Okay, then I am concluding. Environmental protection has undoubtedly become a common understanding and strategy of development of all countries of the world because it is foundation and support human existence and their survival and guarantee sustainable human development. At present, humankind is trying to reach rebalance with the surroundings and striving to historical process of post-industrial society in the land stage of development. So let me conclude. The environmental governance, social progress and environmental protection, all countries need to perform in a joint effort to plan economic development to realize mutual wins and sustainable development of the whole world and create a new homeland for harmonious coexistence of human rights and environment. Then integration of human rights in development, we can reduce inequality as well as poverty. Then my concluding part, I am focusing that by using these environmental resources in a very, very friendly manner or eco-friendly manner, and definitely we can integrate our development with the human rights and we can reduce this poverty as well as inequality in the coming future, and through that way we can maintain or we can flourish our human rights again and again. Thank you. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now it's time for our judging panel. I invite our judges for, if they have any queries, judges please.
Hello, I am audible.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Gigi Kumari, your conclusion, it is, can you give some examples of this kind of conclusion. So as
Yes,
to
sir.
explain it.
Yes, sir. That is, now at present we are facing the problem of poverty as well as inequality. Then inequality is a complete deniation of this human rights. Okay, all people are equal before law. That is our human right. But in the case of equal distribution, in the case of distribution of wealth, that's a natural resources. In the case of natural resource distribution, we can see a lot of natural resources are in the hands of few. Okay, so many people are struggling to get their basic requirements, but the most of the other capitalists or the big owners are they are keeping. A few people are owning all the natural resource of their own, and they are misusing them, and they are denying their accessibility to the common people, especially. Then there is an inequality distribution of natural resource. And suppose if we are using this natural resource to meet our needs only, definitely we can distribute this natural resource on the basis of social justice. Then we can protect this human right, equal rights to use this natural resource. And in the case of poverty also, it is a denigration of human rights. Some people are very rich and some people are very poor. They have no access to anything. Then through development, we can improve their status also. Then we can improve the that is a human right to get some that is basic requirements of their life to get for maintaining their standard of living. Then we can avoid this poverty as well as this inequality by an equal distribution of natural resources. Then through that way we can
practically is it possible, and which kind of ism that need to be maintained for attaining this kind of situation?
Yeah, that's socialistic pattern of society that we needed. Socialism.
How we can transform this the present system into that new system? Is it practically possible?
Yeah, it is very difficult to put into practice, first of all. But we all of especially the people, especially the youth, as well as environmentalists or the government policy makers are trying to bring some laws regarding this use of this natural resource. Definitely, we can. I think so, sir.
So is it Modi which who can do something, or some other politician?
Okay, I think there is. It is not a political. Not only is a political issue, it is a social issue also. Not only politicians, all the social workers or the environmentalists are social policy makers.
How many years may take place?
Yeah, that is the question. That is the question. Because each and every time we are denying these human rights, then we are striving for, or we are struggling to get into back that human rights. Definitely, the environmentalists should come into front of this protest, and we can fight against this. And definitely, I think it will take time. Then it is possible, sir.
Be optimistic.
Yes, sir. Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, good afternoon, Dr. Chiji.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, in continuation, of course, Dr. Joseph sir asked about this thing. And I would also like to hear from you. Is there any example? That's what sir was also asking, I think. Is there a model that we have to follow? Is it implemented anywhere in the world or something? Have you come across this? That is first question. Second, second is, of course, the word sustainability is in debate.
Yes.
Whether the sustainable development is really sustainable. What is your opinion? So definitely, development means some kind of destruction is there. As an economist, you may be knowing this, right?
Yes,
so is this sustainability that we are talking about, is it really sustainable?
Okay.
Your opinion on view. Okay.
Okay.
And we have SDGs now running it, right?
Yes. 17 goals are there. Yeah.
So how the UN is contributing to this particular sustainability and human rights? Of course, human rights and sustainability is in larger framework. If we take international framework, of course, UN is doing much, and we are also signatory to all this, India especially.
Okay.
So these three questions in brief. I don't need an elaborate thing.
Okay, that is your first question. That is an example to get this into practice. Okay, I think just started from, I think the Chipko movement itself, that in order to protect this forest resource, I think just one example, forest resource, we are using this Chipko movement by Sundarlal Bahuguna. Chipko movement means we are hugging the tree. Especially the women are they are getting out from their home and they are hugging the tree, and the meaning is that the women people or the ladies are the homemakers of their home and they are preparing this cooking aspects and all these things. Then definitely they need this tree. First of all, at the same time, the very big industrialists are cutting these trees. Then they are denying, or they are protesting for this destruction of this forest. They are hug the tree, and that Sitco movement is an example. Like that, in the case of in the seeds, in the school level, we can see the Madhrubhumi assistance. The seed program is there. They are continuously introducing different programs for the protection of this environment, and through that way we can maintain this equality as well as human rights. That is one example that I can quote. Then second thing regarding the sustainable development, definitely sustainable is with your question, is the sustainable development is sustainable? That is your question. Okay, it is a very good question. I think that always we are discussing that every development activity should be sustainable. But even though development definitely reduces the environmental quality or to destruct the environmental resource, definitely. Then that time we have the option, that is the limits to growth. One option is there. We should go balance. We should go balance the growth as well as this sustainability. Otherwise, if the development is taking place in the one side and we are not considering this natural resource or whatever it may be, then definitely there is imbalance may be there. So our developmental activities should be, or the government is giving any license to do or license to work in environmental resource. Definitely, government should be keep in mind to maintain for the maintenance of this balance, ecological balance. Otherwise, that is the result of we are facing these kinds of floods, especially in Kerala. Also, we are facing flood in recently, and different landslides. We watch different landslides. Now, all these are because of the bad policies on the part of the government there while issuing the pass or issuing the permission to use this natural resource. So, from the policy decision makers onwards, or from the common people onwards, we are making some struggle to make this development as sustainable. Okay, make the sustainable development as sustainable. And the last one, that is in the case of sustainable development goals, the 17 goals are there. And UN is taking very much keen interest in it. I think the goal is 2030. The goal will finish on 2030. And the UN is generating, or UN is providing a lot of programs relating to different celebration of different days. Then that is a ozone day, or in the case of environmental day, or world international protection day of this world, everything, lot of different programs, different campaigns they are conducting in order for the protection of water, or in the case of air, or in the case of all natural resource. And 70 goals, and in that goals also, it is very important for attaining these human rights. Sir, you are not audible. Okay,
yes, I have done with. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
I request you to just stop your presentation, please.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Oops,
Thank you.
Next, I would like to welcome Father Baiju Thomas for the paper presentation. Sir, please.
Good afternoon to all of you. My topic is the effects of human rights-based approach to education, principles and practice for all in 21st century. Introduction. Education is a knowledge, experience, or accumulation of skills, abilities, concepts, and beliefs. It inspires a child to be a decent citizen. This is a lifelong process. It fulfills the individual being that is cognitive desire. The human rights education system need the movement. There is news about violation of human beings each and every day. Right is frequently identified as essential to civilization and as the foundation of social structure. Each human has the right to survive on the planet. It would be for various reasons, such as wealth, status, possession, faith, race, etc. Persons have no right to disrupt others' people's life. Regularly, to secure this condition, human rights awareness is important. It is mandatory. Academic and scientific training is given access in home and college education is readily accessible to anyone based on ability. Education for all support the protection of basic human rights and encourage them to maintain them. It encourages people to comprehend, tolerate, encourage gender equality and goodwill with all the users around the globe. Understanding human rights-based approaches. As the word most widely used, human rights are the basic right granted to every human being by nature of birth. The ultimate purpose of particular right is to guarantee care and compassion for all persons, women and children. Occasionally, human rights are referenced as elementary rights, constitutional right, integrated right, basic right, and born right. Yes.
No, Father, can you progress the slide also?
Okay. Sorry. Government should promote, safeguard, and enforce human rights within the humanitarian legal and hence ensuring that education is oriented at improving the human rights and fundamental freedom and full personal development. Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights has been guaranteed that nearly all people in the globe should dwell in self-respect even with recognition. The worldwide community started to distinguish the priority of rights after Second World War. It is presently moving further towards the Indian culture of highlighting both rights and responsibility and their interconnections. The exercise emphasizes diverging from widely accepted truth to emphasize the important role of Universal Declaration of Human Rights in enabling individuals and countries to advance in the 21st century. Principles and practice of human rights. The study mentioned how involved and responsible in the governments and study of human rights are described. Human rights response typically argue that human rights contribute benefits to effective governments and initiatives such as involvement and responsibility. As the thought of human rights is becoming more effective in determining policy formation, describes is justified. This is certainly silent when attempts are made to create criteria and to measure the applications of human rights principles practices in the 21st century. Human rights principles, universality and individuality. The human right is inherent and global. Everyone on the globe the right to do so. In Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the universal of human rights is included. All the humans are born free and people are created equal. Second, invisibility. The right of human beings are inherited. Human rights are fundamental to the integrity of every human person, regardless of whether they are pertain to civic, artistic, economic, political, and social problems. interdependence and connectivity. Interdependent and interconnected human rights. Everyone participates by satisfying one's own developing physical, emotional, and spiritual requirement to the realization of human dignity. Equal representation and non-discrimination. All the persons are equivalent as human beings, and by merit of every person's inheritable rights. No person must be discriminated against based on ethnic group, color, gender, race, age, linguistic, sexual preference, creed, political or some other opinions, regional, society, or geographical background. Inclusion and involvement. All persons have the right to engage in decision-making element that drives their lives and have accessibility to them. Responsibility and legal system. Governments and other obligations are responsible for the respecting human rights. In this context, the law and the principles established in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights must be compliant with the principles and laws in keeping government responsible for their obligation to protect human rights. Media, civil society, and the global institution play an essential role. Human rights in practice. In practice, human rights are greatly linked and tried to exercise by people and groups irrespective of a state's proper assurance. On contrary, wide methods to human resources argue that practice in part establishes the concept of human resources themselves. Instead of just the basis alone, which idea of national-wide human conference, real ethical or moral framework. As we shall see, this supposition has had for effects for the practice and light into the components of human rights practice in the 21st century. Human rights-based approaches to education for all. The Indian Constitution imposes on administration and commitment for learning residents. In the education in India is supplied by both the formal and informal sector, with the three levels of authority, the financial support and central, native, and state. The right to education is fixed under uncountable articles of the Constitution of India as a fundamental human rights for children aged 6 to 14. Education law is a fundamental human rights. It is crucial for the person growth because a nation truly grows by promoting its subjects. Rights to education are laid out in the Article 21 of the federal law, which protects the obligation to defend and educate, thereby raises human rights. Conclusion. Education is helpful to live properly. Education is primarily used to gain insights, skills, and values. Learning tends to make the proper and the improper distinction. For reasonable society, knowledge of human rights is necessary. Everybody is allowed to live, be independent, and live peacefully. Everyone should have the right and per the legislation to acknowledge everywhere as a human. The human rights strongly affect the educational and social awareness of the principles and practices for all in the 21st century. Thank you.
Now I invite our judges. Judges, if you have any queries, please.
Father Baiju Thomas.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your presentation. And it is just a kind of communication. And
Yes.
however, what was your objectives or problem, and what was your inferences made out of that problem? Can you put into that kind of words?
Problem is that how the human rights will help, how it will be help to education. Means the fundamental right of every human being is right to education. So how the human rights makes the law that how the person, every person can get educated. That was my objective, one of the objectives, to how the human rights. This is a human rights, a fundamental right
So,
of
human rights and right to information, right to education.
Yes.
There are certain laws prevailing so as to protect the interests, human
Yes.
rights. So why we require a human rights separately? Because all these things must be discharged by the corporate laws, prevailing laws. So can you identify a place where these human rights are need to be protected? Can you suggest?
Education, the field of education, we can see that sometimes the poor children, there are discriminations are in the schools and all. So these laws will protect them to get them educated in the schools, the government schools and other schools. There are children are there, minority children are there, and SC, ST, and different categories of children, different languages, different colors. So the law will be protect, the human rights will protect them to get the education, right to education.
Thank you, Father.
Father Baiju Thomas, good afternoon.
Yes,
one can be achieved in a situation where majority of students eligible for primary education and higher education are not able to access education and facilities in India. Is it clear?
Yes. You are thinking about inclusion. Inclusion means all the children, means any right, any color. So all will come under the inclusion. So according to the human laws, all the person there in any category, they should be admitted in the school according to the law. Means according to the human rights. That means that inclusion means all children come to study. Means there will be disabled children because I am. I am in the field of disability because I am doing my PhD in disability only, special education. That's why I put that point. So all should be included in the schools. That is the inclusion, which means all. The inclusion means.
So inclusion and you have written involvement is also written.
Involvement.
Involvement
means all should be person, that whatever this methods are the laws we use, that all be involvement of the people. So the students also and the teachers also will be involved in that, their education. So involvement of the parents, so other people, government, so all will be involved in them to give them the right to education. That's the.
Thank you.
Yes. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. So you have already discussed about the macro level approaches, that is UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and Indian Constitution, all these things, right?
Yes.
So also you talked a little bit about the involvement and other things. So what should be the micro level approach for human rights education? So macro level, we have Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Constitution, all these things. So how we are, this is a continuation of the questions which Dr. Joseph sir and Patriotism sir already asked. So, but see, human rights education, of course, this human rights should be reached. That awareness should be reached to all. That is the primary objective of human rights education.
Yes.
So how this micro level, what should be the micro level approach for this?
Means we should conduct, make aware of the people. That is awareness camps, and we can conduct a seminar and debate. In this, we can conduct in the school and make the people and the children aware that the awareness of the human rights and how they can be enrolled in the school and how they can get their right to be practiced. That is a micro level. Okay, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, judges. Thank you, Father Baiju Thomas. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sticking to time. Let us break for a sumptuous lunch, and we will assemble back sharp by 1:30 p.m. Thank you.